Welcome to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
Wes Melton, welcome to the podcast.
Hey there, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I am curious what your thoughts are on the virus. I have seen a couple of things, I think maybe Facebook, where I think you have a less traditional opinion or some thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's definitely been a very interesting right brain, left brain exercise. I think I've oscillated between being fearful and being completely unafraid, probably as much as anyone. But I think for me, it's largely because the more data that gets published, it seems like the less we know, which is kind of the opposite of where any government should largely operate.
Mm-hmm.
So, thinking about this phased approach that we're going through, I certainly don't want any additional loss of life associated with this. My mom, she's in her 60s. She's a speech pathologist working in nursing homes, so she's hugely right into the risk category. My stepfather, he has had 2 double lung transplants, and his rejection meds, have made him immunocompromised. And so, in terms of people that I know who are hugely at risk of dying from this virus, I have a lot of significant relationships there. And so I don't think it's callous for me to say that, I think my position at this point is if we're not going to test every adult American for either current infection or past infection, then I think the next best thing we can do is get people working again. Because I think as soon as people start leaving their homes again, resuming some level of normalcy, data will be generated. And I think for any first world country to really make meaningful decisions at this point, we have to have accurate data. And I think most people don't realize that the mortality rates, the infection rates, the favorable outcome rates, all of those metrics are wildly inaccurate, and we don't actually know how inaccurate they are as a society. And to me, if we're not going to do it the safe way, then we need to do it some other way so that we can start making realistic decisions with people's futures.
Well, for example, if you had a heart attack and you died from a heart attack and you happen to have COVID, it counts as a COVID death. If you had high blood pressure and you died, but you happen to have COVID, it counts as a COVID-19 death. So I've just been curious and this, no one can, I don't know how you would ever know this, but how many of the deaths were going to happen anyway? Some of them were.
Sure.
Well, we know that for sure. Some of the deaths were going to happen anyway.
Right.
How many, don't know. And then on the other side of it is how many people have truly gotten this? Because we don't really know.
Right.
And if some of the deaths, the unfortunate deaths, would have happened anyway, and the amount of people catching the disease, if that's greater than we thought or much greater than we thought, all of a sudden the stats are very, very different. The last I had known, and I haven't really been keeping up with this that closely, but the last I had looked at sort of like the coronavirus versus the flu. At that time, the mortality rate for the virus was about 4 times the flu. But that was pretty early on. Like that was about the time America was starting to lock things down.
Sure.
Have you been following that? Do you have any idea what it is now? I actually don't know. We're recording this like April 29th or something like that. So the end of April. Do you know what the stats are now for the virus versus the flu?
So in terms of the actual mortality rate, I stopped following it about 2 weeks ago. A clinical psychologist was actually on a business call that I was on, and one of the things she shared was that in situations like this, people tend to want to be plugged in to the news cycle because they feel like the more information they get, the less anxiety they'll have. But in times of crisis, what you actually tend to observe is the opposite, is that the more data you get, the more anxious you become and the less in control you feel. And so I took her advice, and I definitely think it's helped curb some of that anxiety. But in terms of the stats I have been watching, it was Friday or Saturday. I actually went back and looked, to see what the CDC had to say about 2019 mortality rates associated with the flu. And it's a range because of mistakes in either how it's tracked or people that had other comorbidities like maybe age or maybe they had cancer when the flu, but at the high end of the range, mortalities in the U.S. related to the flu last year were around 60,000 people. And I think
in 2019, not necessarily the flu season, but in 2019.
Right, the calendar year, January
60,000 deaths.
And so I think that is when my position has really started to take a very dramatic change from let's all hunker down, let's do what we need to do, towards kind of where I started at the beginning of this discussion of we've got to start getting answers one way or the other. And the reason that statistic caused that change was largely because just recently the CDC modified their estimation of mortalities related to COVID this year to be at around 60,000 by September.
Really?
Which for me, I'm looking at it going, well, now wait a minute, because so far we've all been justifying this with the belief that this was however many times more deadly than the flu.
Right.
And if we believe that that's true, certainly the quarantining and social distancing will reduce those figures. However, we should also see reduced figures in 2020 for the flu and other common viruses that are seasonal as well, because quarantine should be effective not just towards COVID, but all seasonal viruses.
Right. Yeah, quarantine does not have a special relationship with COVID-19.
Exactly.
It's just, it's going to help with flus and everything else.
Right. So I think for me, if all we know about the virus is its R rating, which is how infectious a virus is, and we do know from laboratory testing that it's very high.
Very infectious.
Right. Yep. Very easily caught, very easily transmitted. There was actually a study that found that it can travel on pollution in the air over very great distances now. So
really? Like more than, what, more than like a few feet?
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember the exact article. I read it 2 nights ago. I'm going to say, whatever institution I say, I think would be a lie because I don't remember exactly what it was. But I remember it coming from what appeared to be a reputable study showing that basically any type of particulate matter in the air can actually carry COVID. So it can travel miles via the air.
Miles?
Miles.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So
wow.
To me, it just seems inevitable that we're all going to get it.
Yeah.
And certainly we should try to protect people that are especially susceptible, like my father-in-law, like my mother. But I think we need data that's meaningful, and that's what we don't have.
Yeah. By the way, what is a double lung transplant twice?
Yeah.
You mentioned your dad had that?
My stepdad.
Your stepdad?
So
how do you even do that?
It's amazing, actually, the way the process works. So, like most organ donor processes, you get vetted, then you get put on a list. And I think he waited, I want to say 3 or 4 years, actually. And I don't understand all of the math behind it, but I know that they largely try to match you with a very aligned genetic match for the organs you're about to receive. But the unfortunate reality is that some amount of genetic difference can be tolerated better by some than others. So it's a bit of an art, not a science. So he got a double lung transplant, and I think within 12 to 18 months, he started rejecting them. And so
shortness of breath, the lungs not functioning properly. Like, what does it look like to reject a lungs?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the your immune system starts to kill the organ, and so the effectiveness of the organ goes down.
I see.
And at that point, they're destroying your immune system via additional medications to try to slow that process down. For him, he had to go back on oxygen 24/7 to try to keep his blood oxygen rate up. And, a lot of anti-rejection meds also wreak havoc on the rest of your body.
I believe that.
If he were to live long enough, he would have to have a kidney transplant. because the meds destroy your kidneys. So it's not always a great end product to get an organ donated, but certainly it lengthens life. But yeah, long story short, he rejected them. He got put back on the list, and he was able to get matched with someone that was actually an even better match, because essentially what they learned through the rejection of the first one is that some areas of either your blood type or specific subsegments of your body's DNA were identified as incompatible because you rejected it. And so the next round is definitely more difficult, because now they're picking from a much smaller potential donor pool.
I see. Yeah.
And so then at that point you go through it again, and
what is it? What does a lung look like when it's not like in a body filled with air? Like, I'm just picturing almost like a balloon.
No, it actually looks a lot more like a big chicken breast before it's been cooked.
So it's not like flat. So it's not like a balloon with no air.
No. They showed pictures of the lungs that came out and the ones that were putting in, and the ones that came out looked like burnt chicken.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
But the ones that went back in, they looked almost like a big
chicken breast.
chicken breast. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when you breathe into your lungs, it's not so much like air going into a balloon. It's almost more like air going into matter. You know what I mean? Like
I don't actually know.
That's interesting.
There has to be a cavity in there.
Right. There's got to be a cavity, but it doesn't sound like it just goes completely flat when there's no air in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. Yeah. There's some amount of structure to it.
Right.
Because I know that your lungs can collapse. So there's got to be.
I've heard that.
There's gonna be something in there.
Yeah. Interesting.
But then you think about how bizarre it is that there are massages they can do to get your lung to uncollapse.
Really?
Yeah.
If you have a collapsed lung, it's possible sometimes to get it uncollapsed with a massage.
Well, yeah, I remember my grandmother, before she passed away many years ago, she had a lung collapse, and they laid her over on her side, and they were
No way.
pushing on her rib cage and having her breathe a certain way, and they uncollapsed it somehow.
That never ceases to amaze me, like how far we have come, what we can do with the human body.
I've got
There's a lot that we can't, like, particularly when it comes to our brains. There's so much we don't know yet. There's so much we need to figure out. Like, that's kind of the Wild West, it seems like. But man, aside from that, can do crazy stuff. We know how to change someone's lungs out.
I know.
Change someone's heart out. Like, that's crazy.
My dad was he was one of the first kids younger than 10 to actually receive a heart transplant. Well, was it? No. Sorry. It wasn't a transplant. It was open heart surgery, because he had a hole in his heart. That's what it was.
Oh, wow.
And I remember
the same guy, your stepdad.
No, my birthday.
Your biological dad?
Yeah. Oh. And so I remember as a kid, as young as I can remember, he had a scar that was about as wide as your thumb, that started at the dead center of his sternum, in between your breastbone there, and went all the way down under his left arm, and then all the way back up to the center of his spine at around the same place.
Around the back?
Yeah. So like if you think about like right at the top of your sternum here,
right,
just like a big C shape that comes all the way down underneath your arm,
around back and then to the spine,
comes up again. So it ends on your back at the same place, like height wise. And
holy moly, what were they doing? Lifting the whole side up?
Well, yeah. So what they did is they broke his collarbone, and they laid his arm over his head, and that's how they used to do heart surgeries.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, and so they would spread your ribs apart and go in from the side. And so he was one of the first kids in the U.S. to have open heart surgery. There's like I remember he showed us these newspaper articles that like he was in, and it was him and another little girl his age. He was 6 years old, and he made it and she didn't.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it was really risky back then. But to your point, like you think about how archaic that process was back then.
Yeah. So again, there was nothing wrong with his back. There was nothing wrong with his spine. This was just like an open heart surgery, and they cut him They cut from the front around the bottom all the way back and laid that up just to get to his heart.
Yeah, just so they could spread his ribs apart on the side.
And now we just go straight in there somewhere, right?
Yeah, now they have like a medical sawzall basically.
Right.
And they just cut your sternum in half and open you up.
Wow. There's a reason I'm not a doctor. I wouldn't be able to take too much more of this cutting and laying stuff over talk, or I'd be
oh man,
I'm gonna have to get a trash can pretty soon.
It's not my thing either. I tend to run at the first sight of blood.
Yeah, me too. So what would going back to work do for testing and data?
Well, I think if you want to use a blunt object here to treat everything as a nail, for me, I think the logical output would be, if it's really as deadly and severe as we've been told that it is, and it certainly looks that way in some other first world countries, then if everyone started returning to work, we should actually see our hospitals get overrun pretty quickly.
Right.
But, you look at Davidson County here in Nashville, where we are, we've had, whatever it is, 2,500 total cases so far.
In the county?
Mm-hmm.
In Davidson County?
Yeah.
Okay.
And in Davidson County, we have 4,500 hospital beds. And in my church's small group, we have a young woman who is a nurse, and she said when the first thing got started, they had all been put on alert, that they were told to expect crazy hours, intense work conditions. And, I think the story that she told us is also very common for most other major municipalities in the U.S., which is that they never really saw that wave.
Right.
So either social distancing and quarantining has worked, or, when I drove here for the interview today and I see tons of cars on the road, even though quarantine's still in effect.
Right.
It's difficult for me to discern. Did quarantine work, or is this thing not as deadly as we think?
Well, that's the question. That's what I've always wondered when it comes to the flu is, okay, you said 60,000 deaths in 2019 related to the flu, but everyone's going about their normal lives. Everything's good. There's people in bars, bumping elbows, hugging the whole nine. People are doing business. You're just going about your normal American life, which, let's be honest, your normal American life is not healthy at all.
Sure.
Your normal American life is you're eating food on the fly, you're eating way too much fast food, you're not exercising, you're working. It's a stressful sort of environment. Everyone's chasing the dream. You know what I mean? You're either chasing the dream and putting your body at sacrifice, or you're just like, just hanging out, drinking a bunch of beer and smoking cigarettes. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of extremes here in this American culture that we have. It's not healthy at all.
Sure.
And of course, there's lots of people that are super, super healthy and actually care a little bit about their health. But for the most part, people are just doing their thing. And there's not a lot of attention paid to what they're eating or what they're doing or the exercise or, how their body is immune to certain things. Like there's just not much attention paid to that.
Sure.
So that's what I've always been curious is, if we just kept that going, then what would have happened? Which in a sense, we're going to get data and we're going to be able to probably project, like, at some point, don't you think, we'll be able to look back and run some scenarios on if we hadn't quarantined, if we hadn't shut down the entire economy, this is potentially how it would have played out, right? Once we get to know this thing. Right now, we still don't know it very well.
Sure.
But that's I've always been curious about is if we didn't close down the entire economy, how bad would it be?
Yeah, to me, it seems like a more faithful approach that was more honest about how poor the data is that we have might have been to take an upper limit approach rather than trying to flatten the curve. And what I mean by that is, governmental decision makers, especially in local municipalities at the city level, would have a direct line of visibility to how many cases were coming into their local hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
So why not, as opposed to let's everyone put, everyone's financial futures and ability to provide for their families at total risk on the front end, why don't we let this play out for a couple of weeks and see what happens?
Mm-hmm.
And if we really are seeing even predictive, I'd be okay not waiting until everything was overrun, but let's actually let it look like that's where we're headed first, right? I mean, accurate regressions or predictions at this point based on trend data are pretty basic stats at this point that anyone with Excel can run pretty pretty accurately at this point in history. So I think for me, it seems like a more dutiful approach would have been, let's wait a minute and see what happens, and maybe the spike never happens,
Right.
or maybe we learn a lot and we realize, oh, okay, no, this really is bad. So let's start being dramatic. Let's start cutting back and get this thing under control.
Yep.
That isn't the approach we've taken, and I think in my mind it points to one of two realities. Either one, at the highest levels of government around the world, every first world country in the world is completely inept, and they have no control over their societies, no ability to actually force people to truly lock down and quarantine like they did when polio was going around. Or, and this is where I'm leaning, at the highest levels where you would believe to have the best data, they know that this isn't actually as life-threatening as all the news media circus would have us believe it is. And that's why we haven't seen any first world government outside of maybe some communist nations really dramatically shut down the entire country in an extreme way. You know, Italy and maybe some parts of Western Europe aside, which I think there were some bizarre things happening there too. It just seems like if this was really as deadly as we're being led to believe that it is, that something like martial law would have happened.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you is what do you mean by them taking more urgent precautions and steps and decisions? Because, I mean, it seemed like it was pretty hardcore. I mean, there's going to be this is going to just ripple for a long time. You close down the economy. There's going to be businesses after businesses upon businesses that aren't going to make it through this. So when you're saying taking drastic measures, you're saying, though, like, the military and the police in the streets stopping cars, taking you back home or throwing you in jail. Is that what you're talking about? Like,
I mean, yeah.
Martial law.
I think had this thing really been as deadly as we've been told that it is, you know, Dr. Fauci sat in front of a small subset of the House of Representatives and told them that it was 20 times more deadly than the flu. And if that's true, why weren't we having people, I mean, even local police officers, why weren't they just patrolling the streets? Anyone they see out, they tell them turn around, go home. This isn't the first time this has happened. We've had the Spanish flu happen twice, right? The first time it wasn't as deadly as the second wave that came later that fall and winter. We've had polio in America. I've got friends that have like hand-me-down newspaper articles from their grandparents of when they had to quarantine.
Really?
Yeah. So
for polio?
And so this, you know, because my friend's grandmother, she said she remembers going back to school and one of her schoolmates coming back with crutches because she got polio and, you know, her legs never worked right after that. And so this isn't the first time as a country that we've had to do this. And, you know, certainly we're the most capable of actually communicating with the entire nation as we've ever been as well.
Oh, yeah.
So to me, if it's really as deadly as we're being told it is, why have we been so unheavy-handed about how we've handled it?
Well, why do you think that is?
Oh man, there's a number of possibilities. I think at this point in our nation's history, political gain could definitely be a possible explanation. You know, when the first $1 trillion stimulus bill was proposed, it was actually the Democrats, which was super surprising, that largely opposed the way it was written.
Right.
And when it came back, it was at $2 trillion, and you know it was a majority vote that approved it. But a lot of what changed between version 1 and version 2 were just a lot of, I mean, ultimately, personal agenda, political add-ons that were tacked in at a time that our country was at its most dire. So, you know, you could look at those kind of things and speculate that maybe there's just evil men and women with evil intentions that saw an opportunity.
Yeah.
I think another possibility is, you know, maybe we believe that our federal leadership are actually really, really vested in our best, and this isn't about power. And they were afraid that they would incite some type of, revolt. Maybe people would go in the streets and start looting, and maybe they were afraid that was going to happen. And
if they didn't quarantine,
or if they tried to do some type of hardcore quarantine.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Maybe they were afraid they would incite a riot.
Right, like if they truly felt like it was super dangerous, super life-threatening, 20 times more deadly than the flu and so forth, that it can travel through the air and, catch people from miles away. If they truly felt like it was that bad, and then they enacted martial law and kept everyone at home by force, that could create riots. And so that would be the argument for maybe why they didn't do that, while still they believed it was so deadly.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of any number of possibilities, but I think as distant as we are from the decision makers who you would hope have the best data, the data we have and the decisions being made, in my mind, just don't congeal. There's something that doesn't connect. I don't know what it is. I don't know if we'll ever know for sure. But I think what we do know is that if you are a person that's checking the numbers every single day, then you are actually fearing something that isn't known, because none of those numbers are real.
Well, about 10 minutes ago, I pulled up Twitter and I went to the top. Like, you just press the home button on Twitter, you go to the top, and I don't know if do you use Twitter? Occasionally. Well, Twitter was how I was tracking the stats over the last 6 weeks, most commonly. And so because I haven't really been I have not been following it daily like I was, 6 weeks ago or even 8 weeks ago. But right now on Twitter, when you go to the coronavirus update at the very top of Twitter, there's no stats.
Sure.
It doesn't show me. I'm shocked at this because I have not been checking. And when I clicked on that, I would expect to see global cases, whatever that number is, 1 million plus, 2 million, whatever it is by now, deaths. Because if you recall, if you don't use Twitter that much, but when this thing was getting off the ground, even when the deaths were only like at 1,500, I mean, they were all about the stats, like the amount of people that had it, the amount of deaths. You could not really go on Twitter without seeing stats.
Sure.
All of a sudden, I'm going on Twitter, I'm looking for stats, and I can't find it. Now, I'm sure I could find it if I click around a little bit.
Sure.
But in the amount of time I was looking for it, just as you were talking there, I couldn't find it. So now it makes me curious, is sort of the panic a little bit over? Like, is sort of this whole, are the numbers starting to slow down where that's not the most interesting thing to be showing people anymore?
Either that, or they've recognized that any stats they show are essentially false.
Okay.
Even if it's not ill-intentioned, right? I mean, if you go to Johns Hopkins University, they've had one of the best data feeds this entire time, aggregating all of the government reported statistics across the globe, all the way down to the local county level. But all of those statistics, again, are so fundamentally flawed in how they've been tracked. Earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that if you had a heart attack and died, but also had COVID, they could count it as a COVID death. Well, by CDC guidance, the opposite is also true, that if you died of symptoms that appeared to be COVID and you had not been tested, they could still contribute it to a COVID death. So now we have people that may have died. Yeah. Now we have people that may have actually died from the flu that are being reported as a COVID-related death, just because some of the overlap of symptoms are the same. So
wait a minute now. So let's say someone dies, okay, and they're showing symptoms for COVID-19.
Right.
But they're not necessarily tested.
They have not been tested.
They're going to mark that down as a COVID death?
Doctors are allowed to report it as a COVID-related death if they believe that the
But the symptoms for COVID and flu are very, very similar.
Right.
Wow.
That's my point. Is the data we have is garbage.
Wow.
We don't actually know how many people have died from this. We don't actually know how many people have already had it, have it now, have recovered. We don't know.
So here, I had to go online to find this because Twitter wasn't showing it to me very easily anymore. United States, 1,050,000 confirmed cases. Now it says confirmed. 1 million. West. The next one is Spain at 236,000. What in the heck? What is that, dude? I know we have a lot of people in this country, but we have 60,000 deaths. The next at this point is Italy at 27,000 deaths. Where's China on here?
I think
China, mainland, 88,000 cases. Holy crap. 88,000 cases, 4,600 deaths. Dude, 4,600 deaths. We're at 60,000 deaths.
Yeah, and we're at what, a third of their total population?
Dude, what is that?
I mean,
Come on.
Something's
Seriously.
either China's lying about their numbers, or we didn't do enough soon enough. I think it could largely speak to how infectious this virus is. Now, I'm not making any commentary on how deadly I think it is, but I think if you look at some of the contact tracing models that go back to November of last year and show all the flight paths and predicted infection spreads across the globe, I think it's very possible that this was already spreading rapidly in the U.S. by middle to late January, and we just didn't know it.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if it was hitting us fairly decently even in December.
Yeah, and there's definitely speculation that it's perhaps mutated, but oftentimes when viruses mutate, they go from more severe to less severe. It is actually uncommon, as we see in movies, for a virus to go from less severe to more severe. The Spanish flu is actually one of the few outlier incidents that we have where we had a virus that went from less severe to much more severe.
Oh, interesting. Because it mutated. The virus basically adapted. That's what is scary about these types of things. They can adapt. Have you seen the movie Contagion?
Yes.
2011, that movie was made. We just watched it since this pandemic's going on.
Yeah.
It was fascinating to me how similar what is playing out now was to that movie. But that movie was made in 2011.
Sure. Have you ever seen that TV show, The Last Man on Earth?
No.
So it was set in 2020, and the premise of the TV show wasn't a great TV show, but the premise was that a virus had killed the majority of the U.S. population, and that
I think I actually did a couple episodes.
Yeah, and all these people are like wandering around in modern times, and they like stumble into each other, and they kind of move into these mostly abandoned neighborhoods and try to build these little tiny communities. But it was set in 2020, which I think is
fascinating.
Super hilarious.
That is fascinating. But I just don't understand. I mean, this would be the China thing, I guess, in particular, because United States, how many people are in the United States? 300 million?
Yeah, but I think that figure includes children.
Okay, 300 million. And like Spain, I don't know how many people are in Spain. But, I mean, they're literally number 2 on cases, and they're a quarter of what we have.
Sure.
Now, America is very international. We're fairly international. There's people in and out here from all over the world, which is awesome. So, I mean, I can understand where we're going to be hit maybe a little harder. And the other thing that I've thought of is, too, is if you're comparing... All right, let's say the population in America is the same as the population in China, which obviously it is not. I feel like, and I haven't been to China ever. I've been close, but I feel like the average Chinese person is healthier than the average American person. Would you agree with that?
I would say most people in the world are healthier than the average American.
Okay. So that would be an argument for, hey, nothing to see here. We just have a whole lot more of unhealthy type people. And so, of course, if something goes around the world, we're going to get hit harder. But this hard, this is really weird.
Well, I definitely think it's tough for China because, them and the World Health Organization, because they either have to admit that they intentionally tried to cover up a known problem and then it got out of hand, or the virus has made a significant change in either its infection rate or, mortality rate. Something had to change if they're not lying.
Why? I missed the logic there.
Well, if their population is roughly 3 times ours, but they've had a fraction of the infections and deaths that we have,
right,
then either we have a different strain or they're lying.
I see. They're lying about the amount of cases and fatalities that they've had. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, did we just go wrong because we didn't shut things down soon enough? But do you think that China took greater measures sooner than we did in America?
It's so tough to know at what point China actually knew they had an issue versus when they actually started responding.
Mm.
The one, and I'm going to use this word very delicately, the one benefit they had over us is that they're a communist nation.
Right. No, I've had the same thought.
And so, like, when they told people to start getting in their houses, they knew that it was under fear of death, frankly.
Yeah, the parent has spoken. Get in the house. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. We don't have that luxury, and I'm glad. But
Yep.
this whole Crush the Curve initiative that's starting to pop up in several different states, most notably in Idaho, is definitely an interesting approach to trying to solve this problem. Because had the U.S. shut off all of the borders, all international flights, and done very hardcore quarantine those first couple of weeks, we likely would have just eradicated it for 98% of Americans. And then it seems plausible that we may have actually been able to manage it through traditional contact tracing when you find out that someone who is at risk was in close proximity to someone that just got diagnosed with the H1N1 strand of the flu, for example, which we've been doing as a country for decades. Not H1N1 specifically, but just contact tracing in general. So to me, it seems like there were other options available to us. I think, Google and Apple's contact tracing tech effort is going to be an interesting one to watch. I think the privacy concerns around what's being done there far outweigh the benefits in my mind.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for every device in the pocket of every U.S. citizen to now have direct government ties at the federal level. And yeah, supposedly the data will be anonymized. And yeah, supposedly in version 1, it'll be opt-in only. I've never known the U.S. government to ever give back access to people's privacy once they've been granted it.
What would be new with that? Because they're already tracking us, right? I mean, they're already, or are they not supposed to be?
Well, I guess it depends on your belief of what depths of information that the NSA ultimately captures about every U.S. citizen. But I think, so there's two things. One, the NSA has the largest, most capable data center in the world that sits right on one of the main internet backbones that goes across the Midwest. They picked the site because of its proximity to one of the largest internet backbones, and they literally leveraged federal power to hook into it. And so every single piece
Where is that?
I believe it's in Utah.
Really?
I'd have to go look it up, but it's out in the Midwest. And every single piece of data that travels across the internet in the U.S. travels through that NSA data center. And so everything you've ever done online
Goes through that?
is stored on a hard drive in that NSA data center. And people would get really excited and say, "Wait a minute, that's a violation of privacy." The reality is, they have so much data, as you could imagine, when we start thinking about the scale of the whole internet, that they would feel the need to know something about you before they probably would ever go start prodding around their own data on you to find you. But they've got it. So that reality has been around for a very, very long time. But what's different to me about what Apple and Google are doing is I really don't believe that the government is able to know where I am at any given moment. And that's exactly what this technology could ultimately open the door to.
Now, you're saying if you did not have your cell phone on you, they wouldn't be able to track you? Or even if you had your cell phone in your pocket, you don't believe ultimately the government could see exactly where you're at all times?
I think that most technology providers have, at least with their public face, taken a pretty hardline stance against the federal government when that level of access has been requested.
I see.
Now, there are a couple of interesting things out there. One is known as I think they call it the cell shark. CELL. It's actually a device that police officers can get access to. It comes in a briefcase. They put it in their car. If they believe there's a perpetrator that they're trying to arrest in an apartment complex, for example, they can pull into the apartment complex, open it up, turn it on. It starts acting like a cell tower.
Oh, wow.
And nearby phones will automatically join to it.
Oh, I see.
Because it's the quote-unquote closest tower at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can start doing all kinds of nasty privacy invasive things. And there have been lawsuits around it, but as you would imagine, the government has voted in favor of itself.
Right.
So, I think privacy is a mirage, but contact tracing is just such a fascinating new era of invasion, because what the phone will do via the Bluetooth antenna that's always on your phone is when you walk within a certain proximity of someone, the two phones will essentially do a digital handshake.
Right.
Well, more like a high five. They saw each other, and then that gets stored. And we're saying, well, if it's only opt-in for now, and it's because of COVID, and this really is, let's say it's as deadly as we're being led to believe it is, then it's worth it. Because we're going to have a way to notify all those people that you were in contact with someone that has a deadly disease and you should quarantine for a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all well and good, but what if our society or the next power that gets voted in decides that the common cold is now quarantinable? What if they decide that a specific political view is now something they should target? What if they then decide that a physical ailment isn't the only thing they're interested in?
Right.
Maybe they want to know if you're a Christian and all the people that you've touched, all the people you've interacted with, because they want to outlaw Christianity or Buddhism or all religion. At that point, the infection is no longer viral; it's mental, and they want to know everyone you've been in contact with.
Yep.
To me, it scares me because that level of access and who you're interacting with in that way seems like a very easy line to socialism in America.
Right. And is Google and Apple just two companies that happen to be interested in investing in this space and creating something, or they're just two of the big ones among many?
Well, I think they represent 99% of all devices that are in someone's pocket.
Yeah.
And so this was supposedly an effort that they actually went to the government with and said, we think we know how to actually digitize contact tracing to try to eradicate the disease rather than flatten the curve. And
what did the government say?
Well, they said,
thanks, but no thanks. We just want to shut everything down.
No, they said that sounds great. Let's do it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean, supposedly Google and Apple are, going to make it nearly impossible in the way it's delivered to the government agencies to actually make the fears that I just expressed possible. I think if I was going to say but what I would point us to is that the NSA employs the most talented group of hackers in the world. And for every network device that internet flows across in the U.S., when a new model comes out, they actually have a task force who their full-time job is to figure out all of the exploits or vulnerabilities of every new networking device that gets shipped in America. And they have a enormous document repository of how to hack any internet-connected device in the world. And so, to me, it just seems like if we're opening up a new pathway to track people, that the tech companies can say it's secure, but if the most elite hackers in the world that are employed by the federal government have been given the task to find out where it's vulnerable, they're not going to just go announce that they found the vulnerabilities. They're going to use them.
But also this whole what we've been saying in the last few minutes here also assumes that the government is the bad guy and Apple and Google are always going to be the good guy.
Sure.
Now, generally speaking, if someone's giving me an option between government or a private company, there is just something, I think it's the way I'm wired, or I don't know what it is, but I would tend to be quicker to trust like an Apple or Google than the government if I'm
Sure.
quite honest.
Yeah.
However, you can't tell me there's no possibility of corruption at Apple and Google too. I mean, and how scary does it get when these companies become so big and so powerful and so influential? This is what's different about living in 2020 or even the 21st century than we've really ever. I'm trying to think of exceptions in my mind and I can't think of any. But think about how powerful the top 5 tech companies are, or how powerful the top 5 companies are, period, whether in technology or not. I mean, to some degree, the government is going to have to abide by they're going to have the government in their pocket just a little bit because they can pay for any kind of lobbying they need. And I'm not saying they do, but this is a new challenge when you have your top 5 companies are basically more powerful than your government. You got to start paying careful attention to who's running these companies and are they going to have abuse of power and those types of things. So I mean, I do feel better about Apple knowing where I'm at every second of every day than I would about, say, the government.
Well, Google and Apple already know where you are every
right.
second of every hour of every
Yep,
day.
exactly. Yep. And I guess there's a part of it where that's become accepted. But there was a point not that long ago where people would have been like, 20 years ago, if you'd been like, hey, you want to buy this phone on the wall right here? Do you want to buy one that fits in your pocket? And then whoever sells you that phone, they're going to know where you're at every second of every day. They'll be able to hear you. Anytime they want to hear you, they can tap in and hear you talk or whatever. Make love, whatever you happen to be doing. Like they've got all of that. You interested in buying that phone? People 20, 30 years ago have been like, no, that doesn't sound. But when the whole thing sort of gradually rolls out and it becomes socially acceptable, culturally normal, like all of these things, it's like putting a frog in cold water and turning on a boil. The frog never feels a thing. Next thing you know, he's boiled. He never felt anything because he acclimates to it. I mean, that's kind of where we're at now, aren't we? Like, it's just accepted that they know where we're at, that they can hear us, all of these types of things.
Yeah, and I think when we look at legislation that's happened in the EU, like GDPR, and then recently California passing the Consumer Protection Privacy Act, and then we've got I think 11 other states that are working on their own versions of that. Like I think there's some awareness now, finally, of what these companies can actually do with your data, and there's definitely a larger consumer interest in trying to push back on those things. But I do think it's bizarre. I think it was 5 or 6 years ago that Facebook got caught recording just the ambient noise whenever you weren't using your phone. Any conversations, any television shows, anything in the room that it could hear, the app on your phone was actually just recording that and transmitting it back to their headquarters because they were trying to mine any intelligible information about you through that. Things you were saying, shows you were watching, because they wanted to essentially in data science, we would maybe talk about it in terms of maybe an interest vector or some personalization vector that they can learn about you from all these things that they're observing about just your day-to-day life.
Yep.
And then use that to inform their ranking algorithms to show you content on Facebook.
Yep.
But I remember when that happened, the outcry was actually pretty small, and it seems like society moved on pretty quickly from that. But then
Yes.
It wasn't that long ago that Facebook got busted again for doing something similar with the camera, where they were just turning the camera on randomly and recording whatever they saw. There was also a great article that came out. I mean, it wasn't great in the sense that what it described was terrible, but there are offices in the U.S. who employ people to sit and moderate Facebook content all day. And the article was describing the quality of the work and their psychology and the outcome. And they were talking about how the people that worked there for Facebook were killing themselves, had high rates of depression, really dramatically terrible just kind of relational problems that were being reported from people working there. And
Wow.
It makes sense. I mean, these people are literally staring at the armpit of the internet all day long.
Holy cow.
And so they're seeing...
I would have never thought those are actually people, though.
Oh, man, it definitely is. It definitely is. To this day, there is a human component to Google search results.
You think?
Oh, I don't think I know.
But how many people, though? Well, and what do you mean a
Thousands.
human component?
I mean, every single day right now, Google employs thousands of people across the world that sit in front of a computer screen, a lot of them in India. And when their search algorithms find new or interesting content or content they think may be relevant to a search term, it's shown to a human. And the human makes a human judgment rating of, yes, this is relevant, no, it's not relevant, or yes, this result is more relevant than this other result. And they do this.
And someone clicks on that, says more relevant. Like a human says, yeah, more relevant. No, less relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, they're called hit tasks or human intelligent tasks. It's a key component of machine learning. Some people call it human in the loop learning, but essentially the algorithm services what it thinks is the best content, and then it farms it out to their human intelligence to fine tune the algorithm.
To sort of get shored up or double checked, or it's almost like a filter of sorts.
Right.
Because this AI machine, it still needs humans it still needs to learn, right?
Well, yes, and it also needs guidance. And so, AI in general, we're still at a place where AI is really only good at very, very narrow tasks.
Yes.
And, I think when we see things that look a lot more advanced, what we're actually observing are a number of very narrow focused AI models working in union together, or you may have 10 different AI models that are being used as inputs for another AI model. It's really common to have a pipeline approach where the output of one AI goes into the input of another one, and then that output goes into another one, and it's routed almost like a tree.
I see.
And so the most advanced AI you see tends to be a orchestration of a lot of very narrow focused AI models being triggered by upstream decisions that were made by another model. But in general, we still see a large amount of AI being delivered that has a human component to it behind the scenes.
Exactly. And so whether people are afraid of AI or not, or they think robots are going to take over the world, we're nowhere near. Even if AI and robots are going to take over the world at some point, it's not happening anytime soon, right? It's just not there. It's not developed nearly enough, correct?
I think that tends to be where I land. I think as brilliant as I do think Elon Musk is, I think he's a little, I think he's too excited about it.
I agree. Well, the other reason that I agree with that is because, and he would probably disagree, or maybe not agree, maybe just because he hasn't, wouldn't maybe believe some of the same things that I would. But I also, when I think about robots and AI taking over the world, I'm not that concerned about it, partly because robots don't have a depraved heart. Humans do. So why would a robot, for example, always assume the worst? Why would they always do the worst? Why would they always cause the most destruction? You know what I mean? Like, if they're programmed by evil people to take over the world, then they're going to go do what they're programmed for. But programming aside, here's a human, here's a robot. Human, depraved, totally, from birth.
Right.
Born with a sin nature, okay?
Sure.
This little human, until God saves him, is opposed to God, opposed to beauty, is self-destructive, sinful little depraved human being. A robot is not necessarily. They just do what they're programmed for.
Sure, but I think if we reached a level where AI was actually able to have independent thoughts and evaluations of scenarios, if you wanted to take a kind of techno-religious approach to it, what I would say is the fact that they're not evil is exactly why I think a lot of movies that show robots eradicating humans are actually inclined to do exactly that. And I think it's because they aren't bent towards evil. They're actually bent towards good. And so if that's true, what do you do to a virus?
Take it out.
And there is no other way to describe...
Basically take the people out, you mean?
Well, there is no other way to describe the human race on the earth other than a virus if you're an AI that is oriented towards good. All we do is consume, destroy, and serve our own selfish desires above all else.
Yep.
And so if you want to, if your task as an AI was to make the world good, right? To me, there's an interesting parallel with God's righteousness there.
Yep.
Because that is also how the Lord would handle these matters too, if it weren't for Christ and His ultimate plan.
Yeah, good point.
Right. So that's an interesting parallel to me if we think about Christianity from that standpoint.
That is fascinating.
Is that AI almost takes the role of the Lord in that way, where there is no tolerance for just pointless, self-destructive.
Right. That's
behavior.
interesting. But don't you think part of it too is, you know how like any great movie, it follows basically a storyline that you see in the Bible. You know, good, evil happens, something needs to fix it, a good ending. You know what I mean? Like any good story has these basic components that you see in the gospel, you see in the Bible.
Sure.
And how much of the artificial intelligence stuff like is just, you know, here's a storyline of like, well, this could happen and that could happen. I don't know. It remains to be seen. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is there's a part of us that wants this unknown thing to get powerful, and is the human race going to beat it, or are we going to succumb to it? And we don't know. Right now that's AI and robots.
Sure.
But this has always been the case. There's always been the case of like, there's almost a hunger and need for, we need confrontation, we need a war to fight, we need the question of whether we're going to win the war or not, and then hopefully we do, and then now we have this outcome, we have this resolution. You know what I mean? I think people almost like yearn for that deep down. But we see that, you know, obviously in the gospel, and good. I mean, here's the thing with robots and AI. God's going to triumph in the end.
Sure.
That we know. But the other thing about Musk is Elon Musk, I mean, he's mentioned multiple times, and I assume he still sort of wonders this or believes this, like that we're in a simulation. You know, everything's a simulation. But here's the thing, dude. He's probably more right than some people. I mean, you know what I mean? He's not totally wrong.
I imagine that if you put a bunch of people together on a stage and ask them to defend that position, Elon would probably have the most compelling argument for it of kind of mainstream, you know, pop thinkers, if we want to think about it that way. That being said, Judea Pearl released a book a couple years ago called The Book of Why. And he actually, I think it was the mid 80s, he actually invented the technology that actually predecesses neural networks, which is what most modern AI is built on today. And he actually invented the concept of a Bayesian network, which was the predecessor. And the Book of Why covers essentially why he feels like we're still a very, very long way off from self-aware AI. Mm-hmm. And I would definitely encourage anyone to read it. It's not super math heavy. It's not tech heavy. There's a little bit of it just so you can try to track with them, but a lot of it has to do with how humans think versus how computers think, even the most advanced AI in the world. And I think it's really illuminating to the conversation because A, as experts go, he's one of the foremost, and B, one of the things he highlights that I think is so fascinating to really consider is that AI cannot imagine a world that doesn't exist. It can't.
AI cannot imagine a world that doesn't exist.
A human can look at a field and imagine a reality that doesn't exist, and it can desire even
right.
It can desire for there to be a house or a horse farm or you know, a new Dave Ramsey complex off of the interstate. But AI at this point is not there, and I think there's an enormous gap still.
Yes.
For a machine to look at, and sure, we have some examples of AI looking at a bunch of data and then creating something that hasn't been seen before, or
right.
Like, you know, one of the more fascinating ones is this specific type of AI called a GAN. Took in tons and tons of photos of people's faces, and then it was asked to generate a face that didn't exist, and it did, and it's amazing. It's the most convincing portrait of a person's face you could imagine. There's nothing about it with its best results that would not convince you it's a real person. Mm-hmm. But to ask any AI right now, imagine a world that no one's seen or comprehended yet. Imagine for me Anaheim, California in the 50s, and imagine a world there where there's an amusement park that has a castle and rides and all the families there, and you start thinking through all the vivid colors and the smells and like the actual inventive, creative process that the human mind can do.
Mm-hmm.
There is an enormous leap between asking a computer, is this a hot dog or not? And asking it to imagine a world that doesn't exist.
Interesting.
I think that was I don't know if that was his biggest point or if he even really specifically made that exact point. But for me, that was my takeaway.
That's fascinating. Accounting is the one area, accounting and truck driving are the two that I feel like I do not hear this talked about quite as much as maybe 2 to 3 years ago. It felt like 2 to 3 years ago, I was at South by Southwest, and that was a big topic, was automated driving and AI, using AI for accounting. So, but there's a very big difference between control this object loaded with these goods and take it from point A to point B to point C and back to point A.
Sure.
Okay, that's very, very different. Or here's these 3 years financials, analyze them, and spit out what could be, you know what I mean? That's very different than what you're talking about, which is actually tapping into the human, creative, God-given mind.
Right.
And that's going to be, we're nowhere close to replacing that.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think we are untold decades away from that.
What would you have done different? Like, how do you think America should have responded differently? I mean, I still can't get past this number, bro. I'm looking at China, okay, 88,000 cases, 4,600 deaths, and 82,000 recoveries. So if you take 82,000 recoveries plus the deaths, you're at about the total. In other words, current recoveries plus the deaths in China pretty much equals all of the cases, which means they're basically, it's under control. Like, it's basically over.
Supposedly.
You know what I mean? But the gap in America is 1 million confirmed, only 120,000 recovered, 60,000 deaths. So do you think, I mean, is there any part of you that thinks they're ramping up for some sort of takeover and this was a start, or no?
Man, there are so many conspiracy theories out there.
Yeah, I know that, and I'm really not into a lot of conspiracy, to be honest with you. But man, when you start looking at the data and you see, who stands to gain and stuff like that, it is sort of perplexing.
Man, I think the thing that is more concerning to me about the entire scenario has nothing to do with personal well-being. I think that in times of chaos is historically where the opportunities are for dramatic changes in regime, for war, for just all around bad things to happen to the human race.
Mm-hmm.
And I have actually been surprised that we have not seen a war break out already in the midst of this. It would be the perfect time.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I would hope it doesn't happen, but I would not be surprised if either ourselves or another major country got implicated in a war in the midst of this.
Mm-hmm.
You think about Pearl Harbor and what was going on in the world when Pearl Harbor happened. The U.S. was trying to stay neutral in the midst of a growing war in Europe. China saw it as an opportunity to catch us off guard. I think our tensions with Iran and Iraq in the midst of all this, it wasn't 3 or 4 weeks before the quarantine started happening that we had launched a military excursion into the Middle East in response to, whatever things supposedly happened.
You're saying in February we had a particular military excursion in the Middle East?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I didn't even know about it.
Yeah, I believe it was. I'm to any of the listeners, I could be totally wrong on which country. It was either Iran or Iraq.
Okay.
And it was something to do with some U.S. citizens that were there. I'm pretty sure they were military related. And they attacked one of our locations, and so we responded with bombing.
Oh, I remember this now. Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's when all the footage started coming out on YouTube of that new anti-missile array that we had built over there.
Yes.
Those like drone-looking machines on the ground that were like spewing hundreds of thousands of rounds into the night sky to blow up the missiles that were coming in.
Yes.
So like all that was happening right before this started.
Yes.
So I don't know, man. I have been surprised and thankful, honestly, to the Lord that nothing crazy like that has happened, because even here in Nashville, knowing that we had a very major and significant tornado come through downtown on into East Nashville, right on the beginning of this whole crisis. And then, you see in the news that over the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've continued throughout the Southeast to have deadly tornado after deadly tornado right in the midst of this. And all the just heartbreaking interviews of people, describing how terrible it is that they can't even go to the funeral of their loved ones that are dying in the midst of all this. And, man, when I think about sorrow upon sorrow, when I think about that phrase, these are the type of images that come into my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, thinking about COVID, thinking about the end, I think my concern is that we may not have flattened the curve. We may have actually just turned it into a plateau.
Mm.
And that's my concern, because there's a lot of very real hurt and hardship that's being generated right now around something we just don't understand that well.
Yeah.
And that's the part that's difficult for me.
Well, I think the implications of what we've done with the economy, we're nowhere close to understanding at this point. This is in the Wall Street Journal today. Here's a paid full 2-page, I won't read the whole thing, but paid advertisement from Professor Piotr Gliński, Deputy Prime Minister of Poland. He's the Minister of Culture and National Heritage. And this is in the Wall Street Journal. It's 2 full pages. It basically reads like a letter or an email would, or a memo. And this is what I was thinking. When I read through this, I think everything's become politicized.
Sure.
Because if whatever administration happens to be in power when something like this happens, if you don't take necessary action, you're done. Not only are you done, but your party's out for the next election.
Sure.
And the other party's going to take power. So it's better to take decisive action and maybe be wrong than it is to not take enough of action politically. Everything's so politically charged. Now we're in this world where everything's about the next 4 years.
Right.
The next 4 years.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost sight of like the long term, the big picture. I mean, it's absurd to me that we have 2 parties basically fighting to run the country. And anytime one party comes up with something, the other party feels the need to basically look for the problems, fight against it. It really doesn't matter. Like there's always just this,
Sure.
And then they come to a compromise. It's like, you can't run a business that way. Like, how in the world do we expect to, if you'd run a business that way, it wouldn't work. It would fall apart. But when you read through this, I'll read some of this. He says, things that are happening before our very eyes will change forever the shape of the world we know. Everyday life of the Western people, which is organized around conquering, maintaining, and expanding the sphere of prosperity, has been unexpectedly and brutally invaded by history. He's right. A global pandemic has torn the veil behind which the horror of the world has appeared. We do not see it every day because we live with a strong conviction that the fundamental problems of life and death, health and safety, as well as the survival and development of our political communities have been solved once for all. Like, is that not right? Do people today not really feel like, they feel like there's this strong conviction that the fundamental problems of life and death, health and safety, things like this, like they feel like we're safe. We're in America. It's 2020. Like we're okay. We're sheltered. I think this is showing us that maybe we're a lot less sheltered than we thought. He goes on to say, we're in the middle of the next phase of this crisis in which the economy has been quenched to a degree comparable only to a warlike situation. It says bringing our economy into a state of forced coma is unprecedented in modern history. No previous economic crisis of the 20th and 21st century can provide a reference point here. Basically saying it's unprecedented. We are facing something completely new. The paralysis of the economy in all its most important areas: supply, demand, labor market, financial system, world trade. Almost all sectors of the economy, whether related to services or manufacturing, are infected, paralyzed, or at least suppressed. I mean, he's right. He says, as I am writing this text, and this came out today, so I assume he wrote it in the last couple of days. As I'm writing this text, the U.S. Department of Labor has just released data on 22 million people who applied for unemployment benefits between March 14th and April 11th, so about a month. 22 million. This is 13% of the entire U.S. labor force of 162 million people. The latest forecasts of the 20% unemployment rate are, in light of this data, quite conservative. So at this point, he's saying they're projecting about 20% employment, which, well, I think he goes on to say, in the U.S., there was no situation like this on the labor markets, even in the 30s. I mean, if we hit 20% unemployment, that's bad news, dude. And it's bad news, not just because you have 20% of people not providing an income for themselves and their families, and which you can tax and all of this, but just if 20% of the working force is not working.
Sure.
We get into trouble, dude. I mean, that's not good. The other thing, he talks about three basically primary concerns now: the economy, politics, and civilization. So just to kind of keep moving here, and this is what I thought was a key point. He's saying the exit scenarios from the phase of the crisis we are currently in constitute the most important task that governments of countries affected by the global pandemic are facing now, alongside saving lives and health. Slow and careful waking up of a patient from a coma is always a high-risk endeavor. So what we've done is we've put our entire economy to sleep. Like, we have euthanized this thing. You can't just bring this back like that. It doesn't just happen overnight. He says, today, by taking action, politicians not only take responsibility for the future state of their country's economy, but also face the most important and fundamental challenge of modern politics in general: providing security for their citizens. And that's where I think... that's where I just wonder, like, man, if we do like a check on like how are we doing? I mean, it feels to me like most of our politicians these days, most of the time, are figuring out how to put a jab at the other party, how to, collect votes, how to position themselves. Like, it doesn't even feel like the primary concern now is really the security for the citizens. He says remaining in a situation of absence of the economy costs our states 2 percentage points of GDP each month. So essentially, if you go through 12 months times 2% each month, 24% over a year, I mean, that would wreak havoc. Aid packages prepared by G20 countries and Poland amount to USD 4,800 billion as of April 2020. The G20 countries plus Poland, the aid packages 4,800 billion. He says the issues of life and death have become the center of politics. He says, for one moment, the pandemic revealed the true state of politics, its eternal nature and purpose. And then he's talking about civilization consequences of the global pandemic will be as severe as the economic and political ones. The awakening has a double meaning for us, the people of Central Europe, because this guy's from Poland. It concerns above all the desire to return to our way of life, a world of prosperity and uninterrupted development without wars. But this awakening from a coma has also a different meaning for us. It is the realization that after 5 centuries of success and imperial power, we are, as Neil Ferguson wrote, one step from collapse. And he's right. In this sense, the global pandemic can be a catalyst for awakening or yet another strong chord of the decline of our civilization's domination. He says the Roman Empire collapsed not only as a result of a barbarian invasion, but also because it lost self-confidence. And he says today we are facing the same threat. The Western world, reduced to the Western lifestyle, has a chance to think what else it has to offer to the world. And this is where I think maybe we fell a little bit behind in the West is... don't you think we often get caught up in like, our deal, our country, what we're doing here, how we can make life better here, as opposed to exporting some of the things that we have kind of figured out. And I'm not talking about the last 20 years, like the last couple hundred years. And I understand we're involved, on a global level, maybe sometimes more than we should be. But he says, and I'm kind of skimming over this a little bit, but he says that according to the, he's talking about the restructure of capitalism. He says the preparation of comprehensive multidimensional crisis tools includes monetary and fiscal policy, stimuli packages, public finance consolidations, bailouts where necessary, well thought out development policy. He says the second thing to prepare for is subsequent crises, or is referring to Marianne Mazzucati's basically restructuring of capitalism. So anyhow, just to wrap this up, he says, according to the Polish Institute of Economics, this should be a multi-annual program. He's talking about like getting back to on track to where we were and then making sure that we don't get just totally blown off course again by some weird random fluke that comes along. It should be a multi-annual program of economic transformation, assuming a new approach to strategic reserves, strengthening the potential of domestic industry, blah, blah, blah. But then to wrap it up, he says, for us, therefore, political decisions related to infectious disease COVID-19 and its devastating consequences are always made with awareness and memory of the past, being the source not of off-the-shelf solutions, but of a more reflective search for solutions for the new reality. And this may be a Polish lesson for the West, because, of course, they had... what was it? Well, of course they had, Warsaw and Nazi concentration camps and all this craziness that happened over there. When I read this from this professor, Piotr Gliński, Deputy Prime Minister of Poland, Minister of Culture and National Heritage. First of all, to read this entire thing, I read it like 3 times because it really jumped out at me. It seems well thought out. It seems wise and it seems stable. Like it seems well thought through, structured. He's not saying he has the answers. He's not saying Poland has the answers. But it seems like there's some wisdom in there. Why is this coming from someone in Poland? Like, where are the people in America that have some of these same level of thoughts and are putting it out? I'm not talking about like putting it out on the evening news, all these sound bites and all this crap. And second of all, like he had to pay for that.
Sure.
They had to buy advertising to put that message out there. I do like the Wall Street Journal. I much prefer to read a newspaper than to watch news on TV and stuff because it's so like. It's so soundbite-ish. It seems, a lot of times, it just seems silly. So, like, where are the people in our government, high-level people, that assess a situation, put something in writing? I don't need to see it on the evening news. Put something in writing and send it out to the American people. I mean, we have the same access to the Wall Street Journal as some professor or director of culture in Poland.
Right.
Like, but we're so caught up in the sound bites and the flash, but we're also so caught up in protecting our butt politically. Because if you write something through like this, if you put a thought out there and then something changes, a few months from now or a few weeks from now, and the political winds kind of blow the other direction, well, now it comes back to bite you. And I just think our political leaders are just kind of caught up in maintaining their power, positioning the party for the next go round.
Sure.
So
I think
there's that rant.
I think, I definitely think there's some interesting challenges that we have as Americans. One, we have, through, largely a history of prominence and providence, we have built a society that largely supports, what we would call small group thinking. Whereas I think in some other major countries around the world, it's much more common to see what they call large group thinking, where it's not the individual that matters. It's either the entire family or it's the entire community, and that you should make decisions that are best either for the family or for the community, not for yourself. Whereas in America, it's the exact opposite. And I think there are some definite pluses and minuses to both ways of life. But I think you've touched on something that has bugged me for a really long time, and it's interesting because I'm kind of like a conservative's nightmare because when it comes to matters of family and society, I'm pretty conservative. When it comes to capitalism, I'm extremely conservative. When it comes to social issues in terms of how do we handle the poor and the needy, I'm extremely liberal, which is really confusing for people because
this is and I just have to, and I want to come back to your thought there because I'm very interested to hear, and I want to hear it and talk through it. But that's my point. This is political.
Sure.
Why is how we take care of the poor political?
Because
of all things, political. Like what happened to what happened to morals?
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Everything's so politicized. You know what I mean? Like
absolute power corrupts.
You can't have
absolutely.
a conversation about how jacked up our education is in this country.
Sure.
There's people that we could walk to a school district from here to a housing project where if you grow up there, dude, it's not good news.
Sure.
It's not right, dude. It's not right. Your chances of learning what you need to learn are very, very bad. Very bad. Now jump in your car and drive 3 minutes, 5 minutes, let's just say. Fine. We're better. Much better.
Right.
Okay. So the education is there is so much room for improvement in education, and so many people have tried to improve it, and it just hits a roadblock because it's so politicized.
Sure.
Why is education even a political issue?
Well, I think it's because
or all these things. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I think when you're ultimately playing chess for a game of power, right? You have to find whatever pawns you can, and unfortunately, the most marginalized tend to be the easiest pawns to wield because for them, if you say you can truly meet my needs and those needs are very real and apparent, I'm probably more inclined to believe you.
Yes.
Because I need help.
Yes.
I'm desperate. And I think that largely, to me, is what's so difficult to comprehend that, this major stimulus bill that came through was being championed by the conservatives for once, which when you think about government bailouts, historically, that is not where the conservatives have landed.
Yep.
And it was the more liberal-leaning politicians that were actually saying, hold up. We're not going to approve of this the way it is. We actually need to get a bunch of other garbage laid in there that positions our long-term political goals. So let's actually double what the stimulus was and actually not change how it benefited the Americans at all. And so like when you say that, I think that's one of the things that's always been so difficult for me because, I have friends and colleagues and peers who are very liberal leaning politically. And, the ironic thing is I think a lot of their positions on how to help the underserved and the marginalized, I very strongly agree with.
Yeah.
But where I get lost is there is something disconnected with how, even as individuals, we process our own political leanings. Because if I had tried to have that conversation with one of them, the response with a large number of them would be emotional.
Right.
It's like, well, that's not true because here's what the news cycle told me. And it's like, well, wait a minute now, because there's video footage of Nancy Pelosi standing down in Chinatown saying the coronavirus is not a big concern. You should be coming down here, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
But that's not making, the hardline news outlets.
Yep.
And the news outlets aren't innocent either. The vast majority of news outlets are liberal leaning, and the very few conservative leaning news outlets that are out there, like Fox News, they're doing the same games. They're playing to their own base.
Right.
So to your point, where is the voice in the wilderness that actually cares about the common good of man?
Yes.
And this is exactly why in the Madison Papers, the founding fathers warned against a two-party system. A two-party system was not the original plan for America. That's not taught very frequently in our schools.
Interesting.
But they actually warned that this would happen if we went to a two-party system.
That we would just be in gridlock all the time?
Yeah.
Or what? That everything would be politically driven? That you'd always be filtering any decision through motivation and how's this going to benefit which party and all of this?
Yeah. The Founding Fathers were unbelievably brilliant if you actually go look at what they wrote. And that's going back to a comment you made much earlier in the conversation about how little we know about the human body and yet how much we can do these days. Like, to me, that's what's so fascinating about the Founding Fathers is their insight into just how the mind of a person works.
Yes.
Has only continually proved to be true.
It is. I have wondered that too before. Man, they had such a big task. How did they get so much right?
You know, I think in my life, especially in recent time, I think I've realized that it seems like the most brilliant people through history were the ones that were the most well-read. And that's not a bent towards education. That's a bent towards what seems to be a self-motivated interest in expanding their own knowledge and ability to think and process through things that seem unknown. You know, I think to maybe make a random pivot here, I think one of the things I've always hated about social media, and this is going to sound terrible, but I mean it with all my heart, is the thing I hate about social media is that it gives everyone the same voice.
Right. No, I know what you mean.
And I think that is a large part of why in recent times it seems like the political motivations have only gotten more deeply divided and more deeply rooted in us, developing their own base. It's because everything they do is amplified now instantly to a level that it never was before in the past. And someone that has no clue what they're talking about can go gather a tribe of people around them and overtake the internet. And now you have a national outcry against you for a quarter of what was actually said that was taken out of context. And there is no opportunity to correct it. There is no opportunity to really fight for truth and it matters. You know, and so I think social media is a big part of why our political system is as broken as it is now and why it seems like it's only gotten exponentially worse in recent years.
When you think about social media, and this comes back to, Apple and Google and the good, the private sector versus the government. When you think about social media and you think about what that is, well, the first one has to be Facebook. I mean, that's just massive. Instagram, massive. Also owned by Facebook. Twitter, massive, not owned by Facebook, so that's good. But yeah, I know people are on other. Do you use any others?
I have dramatically reduced the ones that I follow because I hate what it's become about. Right,
yeah. I mean, LinkedIn, that's not owned by Facebook either, so that one's massive as well. And then there's a bunch that no one really knows about and has kind of select followings here or there. But Facebook and Instagram owned by Zuckerberg. And here, I was just in that same paper today. It was there's an article in there about how there in the last year, 18 months, there's been a lot of shifts in board seat on Facebook because some of the boards of directors were not so friendly with Zuckerberg throughout this whole privacy thing and what should be done and all this type of thing. And, he just recently took the board to his 700-acre property in Hawaii. I mean, it just must be awesome. It must be beautiful. Can you imagine? It must be just fantastic. So he flies all, his entire board of directors, which these are CEOs of other companies. The CEO of American Express or prior CEO of American Express on his board. The guy from Dropbox. I mean, these are very connected people. But he can shift people on and off that board. But the board is what dictates essentially the governance of the company, and he's running the company. I mean, one guy, Zuckerberg, he's responsible for a heck of a lot now at society.
Sure.
Because social media is having an effect with a whole lot of people. he basically owns most of social media. I mean, you have
Sure.
one guy
Right.
who has a ridiculous amount of power and influence based on the decisions of those companies. I mean, if they stay responsible, if they stay good, prudent, wise, shrewd, I mean, it'd be fine. But if they start doing some self-serving things at the kind of the detriment of society, that's going to be a problem real quick.
I think what's crazy to think.
Bourbon, by the way?
No, thank you. I appreciate the offer, though. I think what's really crazy to think about is that Apple, at least before all this started, had more cash on hand than the U.S. Treasury. You start thinking about how powerful that company is. That's a mind-blowing statistic, that they have more cash on hand than the U.S. Treasury, a private industry company. Which there's nothing wrong with that.
That blows my mind. I don't know how to even comprehend that.
Apple actually has a greater company value assigned to it than any other country in the world. If you think about
outside of America,
if you think about their gross of a country's gross GDP.
Wait a minute, including China?
Man. Now
let's pull China aside.
That statistic was shown. It was maybe 3 months ago. I saw a chart, and they were basically charting the largest global companies along with the GDPs of other countries, and like in the top 10, Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon had greater company values than certainly the majority of countries in America, but notably, there were a handful of pretty sizable first world countries that they had more, they had a greater value than the country's GDP. So, in terms of influence, it's undoubtedly there. But to me, they're just exploiting a piece of the flawed human character that I think is innately in most people, and that is this deep, ingrained desire to be known. And when you talk about politics, what's interesting to me is when you say our society has gotten so deeply political, or politicians seem to be so deeply bent on power, not ultimately doing what's best for common man. I mean, I think those things are true, but I think what's really interesting about what social media highlights is that I think social media has actually very successfully trained individuals to be political. And what I mean by that is, like, especially if you think about Instagram, I think that the greatest impact Instagram has had on the average individual is that it has compelled them to spend their life on trying to become a personality, rather than becoming a person.
Yes.
And, you've got Gen Xers and all the way down to, I mean, there really isn't a generation that isn't touched at this point by Instagram and the desire to be known and be seen. And you have people coming straight out of high school that are going hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to travel the world and try to create these false lifestyles that they put out on Instagram in hopes that they'll be able to turn it into a lifestyle business. And for 99% of them, it doesn't work out. And, it's all centered on politicality, because the way they evaluate decisions for their own life become political in the sense that they're not a person anymore. Now they're a personality. And so if they decide to do X and that gets out, well, that could damage their quote unquote brand.
Yes.
And so in that sense, I think what we've largely seen in first world countries is that people have become political figures in their own minds without really even realizing it. And social media rewards that type of behavior to the nth degree through likes and reshares and all the vanity metrics. And so, if you're trying to become a personality with intention online, well, now you evaluate the exact same repercussions that an actual politician does or a celebrity would.
Yeah.
And I think the word celebrity really helps really capture the essence of everything that's going on, from a politician to an actual celebrity to an internet personality. It's all about trying to manage a personal brand at this point, not about like And I think that influences the type of decisions you would make as a person at that point.
Oh, 100%. Well, what's sort of scary about social media is, first of all, everyone already knows this, but it's not accidental or coincidental the way it's set up. It's extremely brilliant. I mean, they're using psychologists, they're using they're understanding the human nature. They are putting some very deliberate and specific intentionality about how this works, how the reactions work, from the dings to the likes to the comment. Like, it's all very, very structured. And so now we get this dopamine hit, or serotonin, whatever it is. That I think serotonin is the feel good kind of receptor. And so now we can get these positive vibes from our phones, when in the past you would have had to go take a walk, or you would have had to see a beautiful sunset, or you'd had to have a conversation with a friend, or you would have had to have been like doing something or been in person with someone to get that same hit. But now that no longer applies. Now, we're getting the hit off of our phone or our computer, the TV, to some degree, but a phone, everyone's got a phone in their pocket now. I mean, you can't go to a public place where there's any kind of a line for anything and not see most of the people on their phones. And most of the time it's social media, because we're hooked on it. It's like sugar. Like, we get hooked on these things that just kind of come innocently enough. And we just get addicted to it because, like, we need it. Like, we literally will get like twitchy. If you take our phones from us or take us off social media, we start getting like twitchy and like annoyed. And like, it's like we're coming off of an actual addiction. It's pretty crazy.
I was trying to find a book just then. I can't remember the author's name, which is to my shame. And so I don't want to say it incorrectly, but there was a book I read probably 5 years ago. I was studying conversion optimization. And the guy that wrote the book, he's a well-renowned psychologist, and it was all around the psychological nudges you can use to actually get people to make the decisions you want.
Yes.
And it was fascinatingly exposing to how easily influenced the average human mind actually is. And related to that, there was a really interesting study that was done a few years back that showed that starting in the 80s, they did this like 25-year-long study of kids in elementary school that were asked a very simple question of, would you rather have one marshmallow now or wait half an hour and have two marshmallows? And they were, it's correlative, probably not causative, but 25 years later, they tracked where all those kids were and what they were doing.
Yes, I heard about this study.
And it was so fascinating because the kids that when they were 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 said, well, I'll want to wait 30 minutes and get two, that they had the highest correlation with people that actually went on to do successful things in life. And I think there is something to be said for knowing your own mind, or at least trying to. Like, I think we all have blind spots. We all have areas where we make self-destructive decisions. But I think it is very much possible to actually work towards being mentally disciplined, exposing your own thoughts, exposing your own emotions, even to yourself, and really valuing the skill of recognizing how you feel, what it is you want, why do you feel that way right now?
Yes.
Is this actually logically a good choice? And that's definitely been a personal area of growth for me in recent history. And one of the thoughts that I had that I think I actually, speaking of the devil, shared on Instagram was that the problem with living in the moment is that when the moment's gone, most of the time you're still living.
Right.
And now
that's a key thought.
And now you have to keep living with the decisions you just made.
Right.
Which is like the antithesis of the current youth society. The kind of high school age, early college, early 20s mantra right now is, and has been, you only live once. Live in the moment. Do what feels right. Find your own truth. But the problem is, life doesn't work that way.
Well, the problem is a moment later, there's a different moment. So now you got to do something then, and you might have to be a different person. And this is what this is the other thing that's real negative about social media is you become, or you can become, there's a strong temptation to become what other people want you to be.
Sure.
Because when you post certain pictures on the Instagrams, that
As it were.
yeah, some posts are super popular, others are less popular. It's like this podcast. We're doing the podcast, and occasionally I'll look up like tips on podcasting and stuff like that. Well, one of the most common is listen to your audience. What do they like? And what they're liking, do more of.
Sure.
Which I understand. I get it. Like that's not even necessarily bad. However, if I'm just going to do things that would on this podcast, whatever happened to be the most popular, next thing you know, it's not even going to be my podcast. It's
Sure.
not. I'm going to stray from what I want it to be, the people and the discussions I want to be having, those types of things. And it's the same with social media. Is if you're just kind of posting, and this is very hard to combat against, particularly when you're a teenage girl, quite frankly. Not molding and putting out there just what other people want you to.
Sure.
I mean, even I will think about that sometimes, and like might want to cater to that. But the problem is, if you're putting stuff out there that just tends to be more popular with your following because you've created this little bit of a brand,
right.
Well, you're no longer even portraying yourself. And what's even more scary than that is, you might be portraying who you've become, but it's not who you were meant to be, or it's not who you are. Like you're just following the trends, wherever the winds happen to be blowing, over that period of time. You're becoming who you think other people want you to become.
Sure. Yeah, and I think
we
it
don't
highlights
need
that need to be known somehow, because it translates to, I think, the mirage of happiness or power, maybe.
Exactly. But then there's this bullying aspect too, which, dude, I don't know what's to be done about that.
I mean, I think
Kids
it is interesting
bullying each other.
to watch Instagram and Facebook's response on their platform to trying to reduce bullying. And I think it's fascinating to see a company that has largely made possible a new way of abusing other people.
Mm-hmm.
To act like only now, 16 years after its inception, is it a problem? It's like, no.
Exactly.
It's like, no. Online bullying was a problem when MySpace was still the king, and before that, it was Angel Fire, and you could leave nasty comments on someone's Angel Fire if you wanted. And
yes,
it's like bullying has always been a part of our society. It does seem like, with so much of it happening online, that we would be better positioned to stop it or limit it.
Yes.
But clearly that's not aligned with how social media companies make money. Or I think we would see.
I think that must be what it is. And for whatever reason, it's easier to bully or say something negative in direct messages or comments on social media than it is even to email someone. And that's a different and still email is a different category altogether than saying something to someone in person. Like that's the most difficult, but the most productive. And then there's email, and then it's this social media is in a category all of its own.
Well, as a millennial, I was trained. I came up right as the internet was kind of blowing up, right? I was born in 86. My first computer was a Windows 95 machine. We used dial-up internet to get on MSN Messenger, and ICQ, and that's where we all, chatted, and now today we have Slack. But, I was horribly bullied in school throughout every grade. Horribly.
Really?
Horribly. Oh, yeah. I mean, emotionally, physically, you name it.
Dude, that's awful.
It is, and it's terrible, and I wouldn't want that for any kid. But I think coming up as a millennial in the internet explosion, I think what's really happened is that the internet has actually enabled mass cowardice.
Yes.
And I think there's through COVID right now, there's this whole, wave happening of business related articles being written about how businesses may never go back to having offices, how, businesses are realizing that remote work only is, actually viable, and they should, because of the cost savings, they should do it. And, I'm reading these articles and thinking about the way I was raised and kind of where we are with online bullying and social media and just kind of all the cancers on society that I think have been birthed there. Like I'm reading these articles thinking, I just don't think that we know what's good for man anymore, because I actually think there's a level of that cowardice online that is happening because we've lost what it felt like to look at someone in the eyes as we're saying that thing and actually having to deal with how they respond and how it affects them.
Yes, exactly.
And, that was a lesson a friend of mine taught me many years ago, which was, this is more pertaining to business, but if you have someone that's trying to bully you in business, one of the very first and best things you can do is pick up the phone and call them.
Right.
He said, because 99% of people that think they can bully you over email or via chat have no idea what to do the second that they actually have to talk to someone.
Right. Yes.
And dude, 99% of the time, if I've got someone that is trying to take advantage of me, whether it's a customer or a vendor, man, if I just pick up the phone and call them, the power of the conversation is nearly immediately mine, because that's not how they were trained to operate. Certainly if they're my age, they were raised in the chat, the internet, kind of, especially with the younger generation today. There's no wherewithal of how to actually do things in a personal and real way.
Yes.
And I think for people that are willing to actually take that route, I think in business especially, it's actually a competitive advantage.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. Was when you were in school and being bullied, there probably was no internet component to that, I assume.
Yeah, most of the bullying that happened was all in person.
Okay.
Not to say that it wasn't happening online. I just think online wasn't. I think it was more common for my generation to hang out online than any generation older than us, and so I think it was pretty well unknown what was actually happening.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. What's unfortunate about the online bullying is, I think a lot of people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to tell someone that it's happening. They don't want to kind of put their mess on others, or, they almost feel like it's almost that victim mentality where, for whatever reason, you don't share it, and you should share. Like you should tell people if you're being bullied online. But a lot of times people don't want to talk about it,
Well, because there's the bullying component of knowing that if you do bring light to it, you will then be bullied for that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm 35. I feel like I can handle, some things. Have had some seasons in life and experiences that, that have strengthened me. But man, recently with, just in the last 2 months with managing 2 companies into bankruptcy, and I wouldn't call it bullying, but, the Facebook messages, the comments, a couple of emails, Instagram DMs, those types of things, man, if I was not maybe as strong as, I mean, it still bothers me.
Sure.
And I still consider myself a relatively stable, I'm not, it's going to take more than a bad comment or two to kind of, mess me up.
Sure.
But you still you still tend to look for truth in those things, and you still tend to internalize it way too much. And, man, I just think, man, if I was a teenager right now, just reading what some of these people are writing me, if everything else was the same, but the only difference was I happened to be a teenager, I don't know if I wouldn't be handling it very well at all. Yeah. And then it even gets much worse than that.
Sure.
It gets so personal and awful and bullying. Yeah.
Well, but you're processing it through the lens of someone that is, emotionally mature.
Right.
And understanding that even if you know how to process correctly someone coming at you like that, and it not working you up or whatever, there is still an emotional cost to going through that exercise,
right,
of discerning and processing what they just said. Is that true? Is that even appropriate?
Right.
Well, okay, well, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to get upset because that's just not, a way you communicate with another person. But that's an element of maturity. And yeah, to your point, asking a child
exactly
to to be able to respond that way.
Yes.
It's there's a level of irresponsibility that social media companies have with people that are underage
Mm-hmm.
that, they say it's ultimately on the parents, but I don't buy that. It's too pervasive. I mean, my kids can't play Minecraft right now without there being a social element being pumped in, through the chat logs that just scroll on the screen if they want to play any of the online like team-oriented maps.
Right. Do
And-
you connect? Are they connected into that?
Well, so we didn't let them for a long time, and now we are extremely limiting on that. And what we let them do is there's like 2 online maps they're allowed to play because there's not really a component of being able to talk to anyone. They're not allowed to do any voice chatting.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you get randomly assigned to a team, and it's like a fighting type thing where if you win, great, and if you fall off the map, then you die and you get respawned onto another game.
I see. Okay.
We've been extremely hardlined with our kids about interacting with random strangers online.
I see.
Because I think for me, even as an adult, like I've really, really cut down on the amount of TV I watch. Not just because of the time investment, but also because I think even as a grown man, I've realized that I have no control with most TV around what is being pumped into my face.
Oh, it's catechizing you. Like it or not, you're being catechized.
Dude, you're just being hit with stuff that unpredictably all the time.
Yeah.
And I just started thinking through that, and I was like, I don't want to be in a position where I'm just going to be constantly bombarded with stuff that I may not be actually strong enough to deal with.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Well, I think if most people are honest, I don't think many people are strong enough to deal with it. I don't think it's how we're meant to deal with it. Do you chat on Minecraft, Lincoln? No? Do you have games that you can chat with others on Minecraft? Oh, you can, but mom has that turned off?
Oh, no, wait. We don't really chat because we're sitting.
Oh, like you and Jackson can be on a Minecraft together. We're in a world together or whatever. Okay. Minecraft has done something right because they have captured some market share. It's all these boys want to do. They love Minecraft.
dude, like it was so funny because we don't like buy a lot of games, and we limit TV time to just the weekends, and
Okay.
we're one of those weird families.
Yeah.
But yep, that's funny. But like around Christmas, there were 2 Nintendo Switch games the boys wanted, and we got it for them as a Christmas gift. They were so excited about it. I kid you not, dude. They played them for maybe an hour, and then they went back to Minecraft.
On the iPads? Or where do they play Minecraft?
On the Nintendo Switch, and
okay.
and so we got them the new games that they told us they wanted. They were so excited about it. We got it for Christmas. They played them for like an hour, and then they went back to Minecraft. And so then they have birthdays in the end of January and beginning of February. And by that point, they'd already decided that there was a new game they really, really wanted. And I told them, I said, well, buddies, you didn't even play the Christmas gifts. You just want to play Minecraft. And they were like, no, Daddy. They were like, this is going to be different. And so, Dad believed them.
Let me guess.
Yeah, so I did, man. I was like, okay. So we got it. And sure enough, dude, I mean, he opened it, was so excited about it, played it for 30 minutes to an hour, and then went right back to Minecraft.
No way.
That's, on the weekends, that is almost the only game they will play.
Really? Now, are you saying that you don't let them play Minecraft during the week?
We don't let them have, in general, screen time at all through the week.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. I thought you were referring to just TV. Because it's hard now because like you have to define these things because
Sure.
we never watch live TV, but we have, Apple TV.
Right.
And, and that's how we watch Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever we're watching. If it wasn't for sports, which there's none right now, I would totally get rid of live TV. So we never watched that. So you're saying no. Oh, this is good. There's some good learnings here, Lincoln. So no,
He's thinking,
Lincoln's
not for
like,
me.
shut this down.
Yeah.
I think it's about time. We're calling it. So no video games or any screen time during the week.
In general, that's true. Through the quarantine, I think we've loosened a little bit. But what I mean by that is maybe after dinner as a family, we may watch something that's short-ish, that's known. And it's more of like a family night, like a fun activity type of thing, break from the usual. But as a general rule of thumb, the kids don't get screen time through the day, and then after dinner, I try to be pretty disciplined about not working between dinner and when they go to bed, and just try to give that time to the fam. And we'll play games, we'll play board games, sometimes we just all do chores, whatever the thing is. But we try to be pretty disciplined about not just feeling the need to be entertained every day. And it's the kids don't like it, but on the weekends we've even started pulling it back some, even them, because we had kind of decided that Saturdays and Sundays they could do whatever they wanted. And I think we've kind of realized, or at least feel, that may actually still be unhealthy to just be able to binge on some level of entertainment all day long.
Sure.
Every week, I think. And so, again, filling those with family-oriented activities, getting out of the house, or just setting time windows on it, saying you've got 3 hours today.
Right.
You can spend it on screen times broken up however you want. But there's a limit. Outside of that, you've got toys, you've got your brother.
Exactly.
Go do something else.
Yes. Well, YouTube's another one that, man, these guys on YouTube that have these massive followings, it's a lot of like 18 to 21-year-old or 18 to 20-year-old males, and maybe 22, I don't know. But I feel like they have, some of those dudes have like millions of followers.
Oh, yeah.
Millions and millions, like 20 million views on some of their videos. And I feel like their demographic is like 9, 10-year-old, 13-year-old boys.
It absolutely is.
Yeah. And not to throw Lincoln under the bus here, but I feel like there's a difference when he's watching, say, a movie on Netflix, or heck, even playing Minecraft, or watching some of those YouTube videos. Like, those YouTube videos are fascinating. Don't get me wrong. I can see why kids like them to some degree. But you kind of feel yuck after you watch some of that. You know what I mean? It's very high energy. It's very wasting time. Like, who can stay in the circle the longest, and you get paid money, to stay in the circle. Like, it does capture your attention, but you watch the 12 or 20 minute thing and you just feel like, well, that was a waste.
Well, the thing for us that was interesting is one of the characters or personalities you're talking about is named Parker Coppins. He has a channel called Parker Plays or Parker Games, and he actually got a Disney show called Parker Plays. And it's funny, and it's clever and it's thought out. But as he's gotten older, like we've kind of decided that we didn't think it was appropriate for our kids anymore, because to your point, his audience, I think, are younger kids, but I think some of the humor or the narratives or like whatever that's just kind of being said in passing as he's narrating himself playing this game.
Right.
Like it gets so, kind of adult audience oriented that I'm just like, man, this isn't something I feel comfortable just putting my child in front of and hitting play and walking out of the room anymore.
Right.
Yes.
And but so that's part of the allure now, bringing in some of that adult stuff, not too much, just a little bit, to keep it interesting. Yeah. It's crazy.
I know.
And I love YouTube. I mean, I watch YouTube frequently, like in the evening on Apple TV. I'd rather watch, pull up the new, some clips on YouTube for the news or whatever I happen to be into. I'd much rather do that than try to watch live TV or, go to abcnews.com, all that type of thing.
Yeah, we haven't had live TV in, goodness, 5 years now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you have the service, or you don't even have you don't have live TV at all?
No, all we have is Wi-Fi. And so we do, all TV is on demand when we do it. And then, my wife, Kelsey, she's really big into NFL, which is ironic because I'm so not.
Kelsey is big into the NFL?
Oh, yeah. She actually won her fantasy football team last year. And it was funny because she wound up in it sort of by accident, and she was playing with some guys that have been hardcore doing this for like 10 years together. And so they're not slouches. And she came in and she whipped up. And
who are these guys? Like friends or something? Family or?
Yeah, a mix of friends and family from, however many years past.
Oh, wow.
And like they were so mad that she did so well that they actually banned women from the group moving forward.
No way.
Which is totally stupid. But I laughed and I told Kelsey, I said, well then you're just proving their point. I was like,
Wow.
you whipped up on them, now they're gonna cry, you know. But
Was she the only lady in the group? Oh, that's hard not to take that personally.
Oh, well, it was personal. It was stupid. They handled it so poorly.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was so awful.
What team does she like?
Oh man, her favorite team is the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, okay. Oh, that explains some of it because those Seahawk fans are hardcore.
Man, but I mean, the way that she would bench players or her gut feel on like which fantasy team members would actually be able to play that week that were being marked as questionable and stuff.
Wow, that's a whole different level.
Dude, her gut was so good.
Well, how does she, if you don't have TV, how does she watch the games or?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. We don't have live cable, but we figured out that through Hulu and or YouTube TV,
Yes.
you can still get access to all the NFL games.
Yes, through YouTube TV. The problem that I had was because I would have done that too, but you know, with the internet, to get internet only through Comcast and then YouTube TV, it was the same price as Comcast internet and Comcast TV.
Oh yeah, TV is only going to be
So-
more expensive in the future, not less. Unbundling is only going to continue to happen.
But I'm saying it was still the same price for me just to stick with TV service, even
Sure.
though the live TV thing on our whatever activates the live TV has broken. So we have TV service and internet, but the TV service only gives us access through the internet. So like we'll go to like the CBS app on Apple TV
Sure.
and watch an NFL game.
Right.
And we wouldn't be able to do that if
Unless
we
you
didn't
had
pay
the
for the
service,
TV
yeah.
service. So the YouTube TV is interesting, but for us it wouldn't have been a savings.
Well, you know, I think for me it wasn't really about the money. I think for me it was when we had cable, I was way more likely to just turn the TV on and endlessly surf or just find something that caught my attention and sit there and watch it. Whereas with everything being on demand, I'm less likely to do that because now I actually have to make a choice
Interesting.
to go find something to watch,
Yes.
to navigate through the library that Netflix has sitting there for me. And do I
Yes.
want to watch that? No. Does that look interesting? No. You know, so it just kind of added a barrier there for me.
Totally. What's fascinating about that is that's all I know. So growing up Mennonite, we weren't allowed to have TVs. But then at some point, well, the internet was a thing. I think we were always allowed to have the internet. So I was accustomed to only on demand. You know, that's my experience.
Wow.
So even when we had live TV that was working, I would never, like it actually never really crossed my mind. I had zero desire to flip the TV on and just flip through the channels. Like that's never been a thing for me. Don't get me wrong. I watch too much Netflix, too much
Sure.
screen time. There's no question. But like flipping through channels was never a thing. So it's always been on demand
Oh, yeah. For me,
because
it was
I
the
never
opposite.
was interested.
I was way more likely to just mindlessly waste 2 or 3 hours of an evening just trying to
just flipping through stuff.
just
But
whatever's
there's too
coming
many
in.
commercials. It's like you
Oh.
try to watch a movie on TV, like in a hotel room, friggin' commercials. It's like that movie takes like 3 or 4 hours, or it's
I
way too
know.
long. You know, who wants to watch a commercial when you're? It's what I love about Formula One racing. NASCAR, you try to sit through a NASCAR race. First of all, the race is way too long. Second of all, there's commercials every few minutes. It's
know.
absurd. You watch a Formula One race, beginning to end, no commercials, and they cap the race at an hour and a half.
Wow.
And it's exhilarating.
Dude, I do love racing
It's
in general.
awesome. Do you really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh man,
I love racing.
we
actually
should
had
go
a-
to a Formula One race together.
Dude, we should do
sometime.
that.
Oh my gosh,
my dad actually had a drag car.
no way.
Yeah. It was a pretty cool season of life. 'Cause he just bought some old, it's like 55 Chevy Bel Air, and it was ragged out, rusted, everything, and brought it into the garage. We pulled it off the frame.
Holy cow!
And, like,
You
every
did
day-
it right?
Every day, yeah, every day when he would come home from work. I was young. I was like 12 or 13, and he would have me in the garage just sitting there working with him, doing stuff, you know, whether that was, you know, rethreading an engine block or, you know, whatever the thing was that we were doing.
Wow.
And yeah, man. So then, you know, I grew up southeastern Kentucky, and there was an 8th mile drag strip about an hour and a half away in eastern Tennessee. And so through the summers, that was a pretty common thing to do. Is we'd load it up and take it down, and
Really?
yeah, it was an amateur track, but it was fun.
Did he drive it?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Big old balloon tires on the back?
Yeah, big Mickey Thompson racing slicks on the back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was great, man. I mean, it wasn't anything too special, but yeah.
What could it do on a drag strip like that? Are you getting up to a quarter mile or not quite that long?
That one, well, yeah, that one was an 1/8 mile because it was more like
Okay.
a local amateur track.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
What did you have? What did you have it do in the 8th mile? How quick?
Oh man, it was slow.
Okay.
I want to say it was like 8 seconds, which is super slow.
Oh, okay.
But hey, man, it was loud and it felt fun, so that's all we cared about.
Oh, for sure.
You know?
Well, also great, man. I mean, it's a great thing to do.
Well, and he had a lot of buddies that were into that too, so I got exposed to a lot of really cool cars growing up, and I don't think that part of me ever faded.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just pictured, I guess, when you said you weren't really into sports, that you wouldn't be into racing.
Oh man, I had a dirt bike starting at around 13, and dude, I wore that thing out.
Really?
Oh yeah, all the time.
How big was it? What was the CCs?
Oh man, it was a Kawasaki. It was a two-stroke 250. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, man, it was a
250 at 13 years old.
It was a beast, man.
Yeah.
It was amazing because when I first started riding, I could barely touch the ground unless I laid it over, and,
Right.
And then
that was Lincoln last summer. Yeah.
dude, I loved it. My cousin, he actually raced the amateur circuit for 4 or 5 years in a row, and it was pretty cool. They did the whole shebang. He'd get a brand new bike every single year, and
Oh, wow.
like they had a race trailer and they traveled, and so like when he wasn't racing, he and I would go ride together and stuff. And I told Kelsey recently that I was feeling the itch again, and she laughed.
man.
And she laughed and she said, "No, you're not."
Really? So that's just a no?
Yeah.
That's a no from the missus?
Yeah, I was like, I was like, maybe if we ever bought some land or something to build a house on. I was like,
Oh, for sure.
I was like, man, I'd love
Why
that.
would she be opposed to that?
Oh, because to her it just equals either pain or death.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, man,
A loss of life or limb?
well, in her mind, I'm going to be like trying to do X Games stuff on it. And I'm like,
Right.
What about my life at this point has told you that I'm going to be trying to do a backflip on a dirt bike? So,
Oh, man.
but yeah, that's definitely,
that's good stuff.
it's definitely, it was a good reminder seeing Ray Ortland. He was flying to London a while back, and on his Instagram, he had a picture of a hunting magazine, and it's like some Jane Eyre book or something. And his comment on the photo was, people are not single faceted.
Yes.
And I thought that was such a helpful thing
Yes.
to say, because that is definitely true of me.
Yes.
For sure. I'm definitely bizarrely multifaceted, but I think
Yeah.
most people are.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what made me think of this. We were talking about movies and TV, I guess. Did you see the new, I think it's a Disney Pixar movie, Onward?
Yeah, we did. We
That's a
finally
real
watched it.
tearjerker. That one is.
Dude, if you lost your dad young like you and I did, that's a whew.
Yes. That's tough. Do you have a brother?
So I do. He's technically my first cousin,
Okay.
but we've just been so close our whole lives. We
Okay.
actually just tell people we're brothers because it's
Oh,
easier.
really?
It's typically easier than explaining what I'm explaining right now.
Yeah. You're like, oh shoot, I've already gone too far. Yeah, if you lost your dad and have a brother, oh man, that movie Onward, that's it's a good movie, but man, it's touching.
Well, for me, we're watching it, and I've got 2 little boys, and I'm just thinking about them and
Exactly.
all the ways that I just constantly feel like I fall short, and
Right.
I just think even if I get to see them grow up into young men that then have families of their own, I think for me it's emotionally tough to process the reality that your kids will never know the parent you wanted to be.
Mm.
They will only ever know the parent you were.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true of my parents, and it was true of their parents. It doesn't matter how good of a parent you want to be. It doesn't matter. All they will know is the parent you were. And I heard a great Matt Chandler talk on that topic recently that was very life-giving in the sense that I think there's a lot of grace, there's a lot of mercy in trying.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think it's when you stop trying that I think regret is the cancer that steals more peace than almost anything else.
Yes. Well, regret often turns into just sort of it can turn into bitterness. and then cynicism, and then regret, and then bitterness, and I mean, it's just it's a dangerous spiral. But when it comes to parenting or being a father, I don't know if you feel this way or not, but it feels like that's one of the areas where the delta or the gap between how I want to be and how I am is just so great.
It's devastating, actually, when you actually think about how inept you are at doing the things that you should do.
Right.
And want to do those things.
But don't you think, too, that the kids have a sense for what you love? And what I mean by that is, if you're not, if you're not, okay, so they're going to know the parent you were, not the parent you wish you were. But also, if you genuinely love your kids and you genuinely are trying to do right by them, and you love their mom, and you love the family.
Sure.
If you come up short, don't you think there's still this sense that maybe it's a security, or maybe it's a almost a level of forgiveness or buffer. I'm not trying to make excuses for like bad parenting, of course. But don't you think just having this love for your kids, even though you mess up and are not the parent or the dad that you want to be, does get picked up on?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I've got an old pastor friend that was kind of a mentor for a long time, many years ago, and one of the things that he said to me about his kids was, he said, my hope and goal for my kids is to screw them up as little as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was kind of like his routine thing to say, because he knew that there were going to be areas of their life where he would just fail them. Right. He knew that. But he just always framed it from, I'm trying to create as few of those opportunities or areas of disappointment as possible, because you can definitely go the other direction too, though, right? Like I've definitely seen parents who take the approach of, let me be my child's best friend. Let me not actually be a parent, but be a friend. And I think, my exposure to it just seems like it always only ends disastrously, for both the parent and the child, frankly. And so I think it's better to fail trying to move the right direction, than failing moving the wrong direction.
Yes.
And I many years ago, and I'm sure nearly everyone's probably heard this by now, but someone said that kids spell love Time.
Mm.
And that was an area I failed my kids pretty significantly early on in their lives. When my oldest was just born, I genuinely do not remember his first year of life, because I was gone. I wasn't at the bar or gone golfing with the buddies. I was working. I was trying to make a future for ourselves, but I was working so many hours that first year of his life that I literally never saw him. And when I think about regrets as a parent, that is very, very high up on the list. And it's still something I struggle with today, because you have to work to provide. And I've got a good buddy who he just ended a job that over the last 5 years was the primary way he could provide. And then he had 2 other jobs that were part-time that he had to do to try to make ends meet. They had medical debt. They had student debt, and he was working 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And it was awful. Like he knew he wasn't seeing his kids. His health was declining. And now, he's in a great new position at a different company. He has 1 job, and that was kind of like the celebration we had, was that Jared only has 1 job.
Oh, that's great.
But I think when I think about his life, like his kids, to your point, they knew dad wasn't around a lot.
Yeah.
They probably, looking back on their own life during that period, won't remember a lot about dad. But the thing I think that he did really well was, he didn't stop doing what he felt like he needed to do, which was to work and to provide for his family.
Right.
And I think even if maybe they're bitter now about maybe that time they wish they had, I think there'll be a point in their life where they look back on it and they realize that dad was just doing the best he could.
Yes.
But I think there's also an element of it where when he was home, he put family first.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't home a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but when he was with the family.
Yes.
And I think that is something that I am trying to be in my own personal life, in the middle of starting another business right now. I'm trying to be very disciplined about, around 6 o'clock, work turns off.
Mm-hmm.
When the kids go down, I'll turn it back on until I go to bed. In the mornings, I've tried to start eating breakfast with them as a family.
Okay.
Just trying to get that extra face time so they know that
Yep.
dad's there, he cares, he loves them. But I think the thing that actually, it's funny. I saw a clip from a video podcast you did. I don't know how long ago, actually, with Ray.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked him a question about balance.
Yes.
And his response devastated me.
Mm-hmm.
And this was recent, that I saw this. And, for anyone listening that doesn't know, you had asked a question on how do you balance things.
Mm-hmm.
And his response was essentially that he had learned in life that it was less about balance and more about priorities.
Yes.
And that was such a helpful and devastating thing to say.
Yes.
Because I think what I've realized is to do what I feel like I'm called to do, I have to make not balanced choices, but priority choices.
Yes.
And that means that through the week, right now in my life, there really aren't the existence of hobbies. There's not, generally speaking, there's not screen time. There's not, games or during quarantine, certainly not going out, but I don't think we'd be going out anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when the kids go down, if I'm not working, I'm reading a book, trying to educate myself on something that might be relevant to what we're doing in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And, to that end, like Kelsey and I, we've got a home date that we do every single week.
Mm.
And so like, that's a priority. It's scheduled in on Thursday nights. I know that I'm not working. I'm with Kelsey,
Oh, wow. Cool.
Kids are upstairs. We're going to eat a meal downstairs. We may play a board game. We may watch a movie.
Just you and her, we eat the meal together?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We'll make like a pizza or pasta or something easy, and we'll send the kids upstairs.
Oh, wow.
And we'll
they don't even eat dinner with you guys?
No. Mm-mm.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah. And we make it the whole night. Like even after the kids go down, like I don't go back to work. It's just time with her.
Okay.
But, I've had friends that have criticized me saying, you need to have a hobby. You need to have fun things you do. And I'm just like, you know what? That'd be great. And maybe there'll be a season of life where that's true.
That's the key.
But right now, back to that balances versus priorities, what I've prioritized for myself and for the family is the family. And then I have a business venture I'm trying to start, which requires a lot.
Yes.
And, I think Ray's point was perfect because I think I would drive myself crazy trying to find balance rather than just being dedicated to things that I feel like are going to matter.
And so many people do. When he said that was so freeing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He even talks about in that video, and by the way, people can just search it on YouTube, why Ray Ortlund dislikes the term balance. And it should pop up.
Oh, okay. Is this water for me, by the way?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Perfect. And he had great thoughts on it, but I think he quotes, I want to say he quotes J.I. Packer in there. I know he does. Because J.I. Packer talks about this too a little bit in Knowing God. And that's a very freeing concept when you think about that, because I grew up, no, that's incorrect. I went through my young married years, my 20s. I heard a lot about balance. I was taught a lot about balance. I read in self-development books and personal growth books a lot about that type of thing and how you have different wheels in your life. And you got to have the wheels, the spokes be all right, and they need to be the right length, and you need to have the right amount of tension on all the different spokes in your life. And man, it drove me nuts because I felt like I could never measure up. Guess what? 10 years ago, I'm 35. 15 years ago. Two things are very important in my life to keep my sanity: hunting and riding horses. Guess what? I haven't done either of those things to any degree in 15 years, 15 to 17 years.
Yep.
But at that season, that was very important to me. It was very healing, therapeutic. It kept me sane. Horses and hunting. And when we got married, we were only a couple years in, and I gave up hunting,
Sure.
and I just didn't feel like I had the time for it. And then same with horses ultimately. But yeah, you got to focus on your priority. TJ said something years ago that I may never forget, but it's this idea that when Christ is at the center of your life, you may not be perfect, but things will orbit properly.
Sure.
Whether that's business, marriage, kids, whatever it is. When Christ's at the center, things will orbit properly. But when you try to pull anything else into the center, business, kids, marriage, investments, fame, whatever it is, then everything's out of kilter, And so, and this is what I'm talking to. This kind of speaks to this idea that like kids pick up on affection, because my dad died when I was 10, but I have good memories of him, and he worked a lot. He had cancer and he worked a lot. Like, I don't know what he was doing. I think he was trying to provide for mom and get her ready in case he were to die and things like that, which ultimately, of course, happened. But he worked a lot, but I don't hold that against him.
Sure.
My memories of him, I'd go with him to work.
Sure.
He'd take me along occasionally, not every day, of course, but Saturdays and wherever. And I had the distinct sense that it was not about me. You know what I mean? Like, I was not the center of the family.
Yeah.
The kids were not the center of the family. The parents were on a mission. They loved each other, deeply, affectionately. You could tell.
Yeah.
They liked each other. And I think there was a sense of security there. But I knew that Dad loved me. You know what I mean? I knew he cared about us kids. He loved us. And even though he worked a lot, and I only had him until 10, that stuck. That security, or that feeling that you're loved by your dad or your mom. I think that's key. It's like, you can spend as much time as you want, but if they don't sense that you love them, then you're just going to be missing that.
Well,
that aspect.
I think touching on your parents there is interesting too, though, because growing up, I don't think it'd be dishonoring to share this. My parents didn't have a great marriage. My mom was a Christian. My dad was not. So there was definitely some worldview incompatibilities there that I think caused some strife for a long time. And when I started college, it was really interesting because several of the professors would frequently have their spouses meet them on campus, and they would go out to lunch and whatever else, and they always seemed so happy to see each other. And I was so perplexed because at that point in my life, I'd pretty well decided I probably wouldn't get married because it just seemed like a lot of heartache, which, I think maybe to provide a little bit of context, my dad was also horribly abusive, primarily emotionally and psychologically, occasionally physically. But so I think my mentality on marriage was just awful. And I saw these couples that were married and they loved each other and they were excited to see each other. And I was like, what's up with that?
Wow.
And so like to be married now and, we've been married for 11 years and, we still love each other. We still enjoy being together.
Yep.
Like one of the jokes in our house between Kelsey and I is that, she tends to follow me around the house sometimes like a puppy if I'm not working because she just loves being with me.
Oh yeah.
So like, I feel very, very grateful that Kelsey and I have the relationship we do and that 11 years in, we're still in love. And, we've had some very difficult seasons too. And it's so funny because the years that were the most difficult were when I had put my professional career at the center of my focus rather than ultimately the Lord and then the family. Yep. And so it's interesting this time around, this is our third business venture now. I still haven't learned my lesson,
right.
But I think it's been a constant prayer for me, asking the Lord to help me understand the balance between doing what I need to do to be faithful to the needs of the business without putting myself in the place of God.
Right.
And 2 nights ago, it was about 10:30 at night, and I was sitting there at the computer and I was working, and I looked up at the time and I knew that my day the next day was going to start at the same time no matter what. And I just felt like it was a unique time to press pause and pray and ask the Lord, do I need to finish this thing I'm working on? or do I need to go to bed
Mm.
and trust you with the outcome?
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult because my bent is just work,
Yep.
and let my body suffer or whatever else. And, I think, many are the plans
Mm-hmm.
of a man's heart, but it's the way of the Lord that succeeds, or the will of the
Yes.
Lord that succeeds.
Yes.
And so it's definitely been a new discipline for me that I'm trying to practice.
Yes.
But it's all centered around priorities and not balance.
Yes, exactly. What do you do to have Kelsey follow you around the house? Because in our relationship, I follow Mariana around the house. Every so often, like if we go through an intense, there was a few times in the last half year where some really strange things were going on related to the difficulties in business and stuff. Just a very intense, day or something like that, or a very intense meeting that, whatever. When it's things like that, she'll just want to come spend time with me, just
Yeah.
be close to me.
Yeah.
But generally I like to be around her. I think she does love me though.
One of my favorite Abraham Lincoln quotes is the best thing a man can do for his kids is to love their mother.
Yeah.
And I think on date nights, it's hilarious. Like we're pretty hard lined about it. Like when it's time to go to bed, the kids will be like, because we have this thing we do sometimes called snuggle time, which is we'll just lay in bed and talk about whatever they want to talk about. And like on date nights, they'll be like, hey, can we snuggle? And we're like, nope. It's date night.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to tell you one thing. Nope. You can tell me in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's good. I think that's great structure. And by the way, you already know this because you've done it 3 times with starting ventures and businesses, but you birthing something,
oh man,
dude, it is an all-consuming process. Birthing a child, guess what? That's what you're focused on.
I know.
It's all-consuming.
Yeah.
Birthing a business, same thing. Organization, whatever it is, same thing. So, it's not going to be that way for you forever.
Sure, it can't be.
It can't be, but you're in a very particular season right now.
Right.
And it is all-consuming. I'm curious about the date night. And then I'm also curious about, it sounds like you're getting up at some point in the morning, starting work, and then working all day, and then taking a break around 6. And then what time do the boys go to bed, and what time do you start working again?
Yeah, so I usually around 5:30 will hit the treadmill for half an hour.
Okay.
Because in the past, I definitely let my body suffer for the sake of trying to either make ends meet or grow a business, whatever the thing was at the time.
It's a slippery slope. I've been there many times.
Well, I mean, dude, my health got crazy. I was at 325 pounds.
When?
Dude, probably 2.5 years ago.
325?
Yeah.
What are you right now?
I'm a little over, I think a little over 210. So, and I'm actually up.
You went from 325 to 210?
Well, actually, I went from 325 to 180. And then...
Hold on a second.
And then around Thanksgiving last year, I started putting on a little fluff, and I haven't gotten it off yet. But
you went from 325 to 180?
Yeah, it took me about it was about an 18-month to 2-year journey. So I didn't do it like overnight, but
that is, I don't know if I've personally met someone that has done that.
Dude, it was it was idiocy that I put it on. I was a corporate consultant. The company was always paying to eat out. They were stocking snacks. You're working crazy hours. You don't care about your body. You're just trying to get stuff done and eating whatever's there. And turns out when you're stressed, that food is a really good...
dude, trust me, I know. Food is a great stress reliever.
People usually either turn to food or alcohol, right?
Yeah,
So food was my thing. And so yeah, this time around, I'm trying to set those priorities of at X o'clock in my day, I'm going to stop. I'm going to hit the treadmill for half an hour, and then I'm going to start dinner with the kids. And I try to help Kelsey more in the kitchen by actually making at least half the meals through the week now.
Because you can cook, right?
That's what she says. So,
well, the time you had us over, you made that soup, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty advanced, dude.
You can thank my mama for that, man. She always had me in the kitchen growing up.
Oh, that's great.
That was a great time we always had together. She had me in there helping her, but usually the kids go down about 8:30, And then usually I'm back at it again until not too late anymore. Usually it's kind of 10:30, 11 is kind of the upper bounds of.
So you'll work again from 8:30 to 10:30, or
Yeah.
sometimes 11.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
How
then-
long do you think this season will last? Sorry to interrupt. You were saying something.
How long do I think it will last? Man, my gut says with where we are right now, I would say probably at least another 18 months to 2 years
Mhm.
before I can start kind of giving back the evenings to other things.
Mm-hmm. You enjoy it though? You enjoy the work?
I do. It's overwhelming. It's stressful. This time around, I'm taking a different approach. The first 2 times I had I had a co-founder, which was a very different dynamic to start a business in.
Mm-hmm.
You have someone to instantly bounce ideas off that are, they're vested just like you are and making good choices. You hopefully have picked a co-founder that has offsetting strengths to your weaknesses, and I think that my co-founders did. This time it's just me, and so it's definitely a very different experience having to leverage some different intellectual muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely kicking my butt in some ways. And the strategies are different. So it's, the answer to your question is, do you enjoy it? The answer is I do,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also kind of like, it's like bodybuilding. It's like when you're in the gym trying to reach that next bench press,
Yep.
no one's enjoying that.
Right.
That's misery.
Yep. Yeah.
But later that day when you look in the mirror, you're like, oh yeah,
exactly.
It's like then you're glad you did it and you'll do it again the next day.
Yes.
And for me, it's I think a lot of it is like that. I enjoy growth. I enjoy building things.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy solving problems. But entrepreneurship, for anyone that's ever done it, and I'm sure you would attest to this too. It's a fine mix of misery and joy.
It's beautifully brutal.
Yeah, I mean,
Beautifully brutal,
you have those.
but you got to be built for it.
Well, you have those what feels like peppered moments of like being on top of the mountaintop,
Yes.
and then you have like the 80% of like just being down in the valley, like
Oh yes.
it's just drudged through the mud.
Absolutely. I remember building sheds when I was a teenager. I was driving because I remember driving, and I just remember being 16, 17 years old, building sheds all week, putting in your hours, 4:30 on a Friday, literally punching the clock, checking out at 4:30 on the dot. Gonna go to maybe a college hockey game to watch some hockey that night with your friends, and just feel like on the drive home, just your body's tired from the work or whatever, but you're done for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You're done until 5 a.m. Monday or something, whatever.
Yep.
And just that feeling of like cranking the music, it's Friday night, you're done. Well, that goes away very quickly when you're trying to start something yourself or be a manager.
I haven't felt that way in 10 years.
Exactly. I feel the exact same. The other week I actually thought about it. I'm like, I don't even know what that feeling feels like anymore. I want to hear about what you're starting. But so date night. So it's every Thursday night, starting at around dinner time?
Yeah.
And then you'll have the kids fed. And they're what ages again?
They're 8 and 10.
For the listeners, 8 and 10, 2 boys. And Titus and Asher. And they're going to get something maybe before you guys eat, I'm assuming?
No, usually. So they're pretty well independent at this point.
They make themselves some dinner and go upstairs?
Well, we'll make it for them, but it's usually prepared around the same time that ours is ready.
Okay.
But it's usually something simple like, spaghetti or a pizza we can throw in the oven.
Okay.
Which we generally eat pretty healthy, but that date night they look forward to as well because it's a night they're going to get to eat something.
Okay.
Something good.
So, so they're going to have some dinner. Do they eat the dinner upstairs or do they eat it downstairs real quick and then go up?
Yeah. So our upstairs area has a couch and a coffee table area. And so we'll let them eat at the coffee table while they watch a movie. And they just kind of do their own thing, and they pretty well know don't come downstairs.
Oh yeah,
leave us alone.
You guys will make dinner together, have dinner together, and hang out. And then, do they put themselves to bed?
No, so we'll usually press pause around dinner. Not dinner, a bedtime.
Okay.
We'll do our bedtime routine with them. It's usually abbreviated on date night.
Okay.
And we'll keep it short. We tell them it's date night. We're gonna brush your teeth, put you to bed.
I've never heard of this before, but I kind of like it.
Yeah.
How long have you guys been doing it?
So, man, I think we've been doing this now for 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you done it just, you stayed in the house, or do you sometimes, like this date night on Thursday night, this is particularly, you're not going out, you're just staying inside, making dinner and hanging out?
Yeah, typically it's in the house. It's at our home because we don't have any family here.
Right.
And we moved here from the Gatlinburg, Tennessee area where we had our last business, and we really only kind of got to know a good babysitter towards the end of that season.
Okay.
And so even then we would occasionally go out, but typically it was at home. A good babysitter is expensive.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I started looking at what we were paying to go out on a date, and I was like,
Yep.
man, I could have, bought one of the best steaks the butcher had and made it at home for
Exactly.
a lot less than what I just paid a babysitter to watch my kids while I go out and still pay for the check.
Exactly.
So,
Totally. I don't want to miss. We actually kind of missed the whole reason you came on the podcast. You came on the podcast to talk about your life story and your businesses.
Oh man, ask away, man.
I think we got sidetracked.
This is what good editing's for.
Yeah, right. No, we won't edit any of this. What are you starting right now?
Yeah, so I'm starting a new software company called Nokori, spelled Nokori. It's the Japanese word for rest. It's a software startup in the short-term rental industry, which is, given everything going on with the quarantine and the pandemic and the impact that it's had on travel, it's definitely a interesting moment to be starting a software startup in the travel industry.
Right.
But I think in general, I think that when others are being cautious, it's usually a pretty good time in business to be greedy if you can.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're staying heads down. We haven't actually announced just yet what we're doing.
Okay.
But we've already got a full-time employee on the team. We've got several contractors that we're working with, consultants. So we're full steam ahead right now, and we're definitely ramping up on development and trying to move to get into production. Hopefully the next 2 to 3 months. So
Okay.
it's an intense moment.
Are you using investor money for this? Are you funding it yourself?
Yeah. So I've so far decided to self-fund it.
Okay.
I'm pretty bent against taking on investment.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rand Fishkin has a really great book called Lost and Founder, and he kind of chronicles his own life, going from someone that was an SEO consultant to actually starting at the time what was largely one of the most successful SEO software companies that had started, taking on VC funding, going through that whole exercise to ultimately largely being asked to leave by the investors.
Wow.
He chronicles a lot of really key business moments, and even passing an opportunity to be acquired by HubSpot, because the return on the investment wasn't as high as what the VCs were looking for. And I think he does a really fair, objective job of actually explaining how VCs tend to have very disconnected values than a founder does.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense. Anytime that you have someone playing Moneyball and you have someone that's actually looking to grow a business on profit,
Right.
their value systems are going to be misaligned. And I think that's true for me too. I think if we ever took on investment, it would have to be someone that had. It would have to be a strategic investor that had long-term profitability in mind. We're not growing this business on revenue. We're going to grow it on profit. I'm extremely committed to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really, the last two businesses that we started and were fortunate enough to be able to exit. We grew those debt free. We grew them on cash.
Mm-hmm.
We probably missed some growth opportunities that would have increased the exit, value. But I'm looking back on it. I'm 100% okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed maintaining control of what I was building. And I think there are investors out there that are okay with having a 10-year return on money.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even then it would be tough for me. Because I think there are key moments where your business gets defined from that point into the future.
Mm-hmm.
That if you aren't in the driver's seat, it may not get defined the way that you want your future to play out. And I think where you see that happen most frequently is with private equity investments, because they don't actually want to own the whole business most of the time.
Right.
They want to own a majority,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to keep the founding team in place to keep it growing at a quote unquote profitable, sustainable growth trajectory.
Yep.
Except for the founding team doesn't have authority to make any decisions anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're minority owners now.
Right.
So anyway, that was a really long-winded way of saying we haven't taken outside investment. I don't think we're going to.
Yep.
If we do, there would need to be a very strong strategic component to me. I think the type of investment that would be attractive would likely be from other corporate entities that actually offered some strategic growth component to it that wasn't actually related to the money.
Yes. Yes. Well, it sounds like you know what you want. You know your lane and you want to stay in it. I think that's extremely wise.
To that point, it's really funny that you say that, because I've thought a lot the past few weeks about the kind of the entrepreneurial adage that ideas are easy, implementation is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And towards the end of last week, I decided I'm gonna start calling BS on that phrase.
Mm.
I actually think ideas are everything, and I think implementation is also everything. But I don't think that what people mean when they say that is actually true, because what they mean is that anyone can have a great idea,
Right.
but only a select few are actually talented or hungry or driven enough to actually implement it and make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And tying it back to what we talked about earlier around all of the influence that's around you, the reason that I don't think that ideas are easy is because once you actually start trying to implement, your idea will be tested by everyone that you talk to. Everyone's going to think either you're wrong, or that there's something you're not considering, or that it'll never work, that you should really go do this other thing. And having the discipline to stay committed to an idea and see it through,
Yes.
that, in my opinion, is actually why ideas matter. And if someone says implementation is everything, if they actually mean that staying disciplined to the idea and actually seeing it through
Right.
is the hard part, then I agree with them. But I don't think that's what they typically mean.
No, I agree. Yeah, and a bunch of extra tactics, even really well done tactics, can't make up for bad strategy.
Oh man, absolutely.
So I
yeah.
agree with what you're saying 100%.
But yet then you have these unicorn companies that survive only because the idea was the right one.
Mm-hmm.
The implementation almost didn't matter because, especially in our industry, in the short-term rental industry, there are so many software companies that were just in the right place at the right time, that having been up close to them and their founding team, certainly they're talented, but I think there was a reality that they had something people wanted.
Right. Yes, totally.
And I think as an our CMO, Joy, that we brought on the team recently, we had that conversation a couple of days ago. I told her, I said, the struggle with being a startup is when something's working, you don't know, and maybe ever, whether you were lucky or good.
Yes.
And that's and
you
that,
probably should never know, huh?
Well, and that's what taints every talk I ever hear of an entrepreneur talk about how you should do something.
Yeah.
It's like, well, but you don't know if you were lucky or good.
That's right.
You don't know if you were riding a wave, if timing was just in your favor, or if you really did actually look at a market, see an opportunity and seize it.
Mm-hmm.
I think few people actually are able to say that, they were 40% lucky and 60% good, or whatever the thing is, But my old business partner, he used to say that he didn't care which it was. He just hoped that the good bucket started filling up before the lucky bucket got empty.
That's a good way to think about it. The good bucket filled up before the lucky bucket get empty. And you got to be going for your goal has to be, this is going to work because we do it well. Your goal can't be, this is going to work if we get lucky, obviously. But what you're saying is in hindsight. Right. Because people do like to talk about their success stories.
Sure.
And in hindsight, it's like, it is hard to decipher, how much of that was luck and how much of that was just being good.
Well, and I think it's difficult. It's difficult to actually be objective about what made you successful. And I think that's why you see I think sometimes you see people that were very successful in a given scenario that are then put into a different scenario and they fail miserably. And it's not always about a mismatch of the seat they were put into with their skill sets. I think sometimes it's, they caught a particular angle on a very specific thing and made it work. But that's different, I think, than really deeply understanding what mechanics were involved in actually making that a success.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great point. I don't want to keep you. Anything else to? We're gonna have to have you back on because there's a lot more I want to talk about. Anything you want to leave with the listeners in closing?
Man, I think I would. I think I'd circle back to the discussion around balances versus priorities. And I would say that if you're struggling in your life to find balance between the things you're passionate about and think that are important and the things that other people are saying you should be doing, I would say don't try to balance things. Decide what the priorities for your life are. Decide what things you will have been happy you put time into when you're dead, and lift those to the top and stay committed to that. And I think looking back on it, you'll be much happier with the decisions you made. For me, balance has often been the excuse I used to do things that ultimately yielded zero fruit in my life. It's a Tuesday night. I'm tired. I don't want to work right now. Well, I need to find balance. So I'm just going to turn the TV on and veg. I need to veg. And it's okay because I'm finding balance. It's like looking back on those moments now, it's like, yeah, I was tired. But vegging actually didn't produce any fruit either. I didn't feel rested afterward.
Yep.
I just felt mentally just strung out, having been fed whatever the TV showed me for the past couple hours.
Yes. Yep.
So that I think that would be the parting wisdom, and we can thank Ray for it. Is that it's not balance, it's priorities, and I think there is a lot of freedom there.
Totally agree. Wes Melton, thanks for being on the podcast.
Man, thanks so much for having me. It's been really
great. I really enjoyed
awesome.
it.
Yeah, me too.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.